Welcome back to Worlds of Protheka audiobooks. And if this is your first time, be warned. Once you step into Protheka, you'll never want to leave. With beasts who will stop at nothing to protect the women they love, and women who are only just finding out what a real man can be, you'll lose yourself in the dark romance of these fantasy stories. To bring you these free full audiobooks, we have to listen to this platform's guidelines, and they say that Protheka's steamiest scenes aren't allowed. But you can still get them from the unabridged version of any Prothekan audiobook. All you have to do is go to worldsofprotheka.com. With promo code YouTube30, we're offering you the opportunity to get 30% off of any audiobook, ebook, or bundle. We appreciate you subscribing to the channel, as it makes bringing these free full audiobooks to you possible. Don't forget to like and comment to let us know what you think. Protheka's magic is eternal, and this story is just the beginning. Chapter 1. Solène. I stack another log onto the fire, watching embers lean into the dark like restless spirits scraping at the glass. The hearth spits and cracks, a feeble, desperate sound. Shadows flicker and writhe over the rough stone walls of our cottage, twisting the familiar shapes of our home into monstrous silhouettes. The fire is a dying heart. It struggles in the face of the cold seeping through every crack and crevice, a damp, grave-like chill, relentless as the winter itself. My hands tremble, a shiver born of cold or fear, I don't know which. Quietly, I whisper the old words, a prayer stitched with curses, a plea to whatever might listen. Hold back the Vraken, keep their claws away from this place. I remember the elders' tales, of Vraken hunger so profound they could smell the warmth of a beating heart through a stone wall, a scent they craved more than any other. Snow hammers the roof like the drums of war, each pounding beat a staccato tattoo that fills the silence between whispered fears. Mira, small and trembling, huddles near the hearth, her tiny fingers curled tight around the iron and bone charm I pressed into her palm earlier that day. I want to tell her it will protect us, that the charm shields her from what lurks in the dark, but the words catch in my throat, a lie too brittle to speak. Instead, I pull the thick wool blanket tighter around her shoulders and run a shaky hand over her silky hair. The air feels thick, heavy with a suffocating dread. Even within the groaning, weather-beaten walls of our cottage, the village's collective fear bleeds in, unsaid but everywhere. No one dares speak the truth aloud, but the old wives' tales weigh on every tongue. The feast of shadows is coming again. Fresh blood, fresh sorrow. The Vraken will demand it anew. Suddenly a brutal, jagged bang shatters the fragile quiet, the sound of an axe splitting bone. My heart lurches violently. My hands grow cold and clammy. The door rattles under another furious blow, louder, sharper, the wood groaning in protest. A voice slices through the gale, desperate and ragged. "Solène! Chapel! Now! They're coming!" Time fractures. I see Mira's wide, terrified eyes, our breath a misty dance in the freezing air between us. A cruel thought claws at me. Is the charm enough? Will it keep her safe? Will I? Another savage slam shakes the entire doorframe, more furious than the last, splintering the wood near the latch. The cold wind rushes in through the new cracks, carrying the scent of wet earth and something darker, something metallic and sharp that makes my belly twist. It is the smell of blood on snow. From the shadows outside, the door is shoved open and a figure stumbles inside. Rodel, his face streaked with snow and a wild animal terror. Behind him, others cluster hurriedly, faces pale, drawn tight with fear. They clutch bundles, drag weeping children, and pull all of us toward a shared fate none of us want. "We have to move," Rodel pants, his voice rough as bark ripping. "The Vraken! They're close. I saw their shadows on the ridge." I wrap my arms tight around Mira, clutch our own useless charms, and snatch the heavy blanket around us. There is no time, no room for hesitation. Together we spill out into the storm's waiting maw. The cold rushes against me like 1,000 tiny knives. The wind doesn't just howl, it shrieks, a banshee's cry that presses into my bones and seems to whisper my name. Snow spears into exposed skin, a blinding, suffocating wall of white that erases the world. Tears freeze on Mira's cheeks, catching the faint light like chips of glass. Her small body trembles violently against mine, and my own breath comes in quick, shallow gasps. The village dissolves into chaos. Doors slam shut behind terrified families. Children wail, broken sobs cut by their parents' desperate pleas for silence. Everyone stumbles toward the chapel's flickering light, a shaky, distant beacon wreathed in a halo of protective flame that seems impossibly far away. The cold slices deeper than fabric, but something colder slinks beyond the storm, an unseen shadow tightening like a noose, waiting for the feast to be fed. Struggling against the wind, snow swallowing our feet, we reach the chapel. Its heavy oak doors, burning amber in the candlelight within, are thrown open for us. Inside, a murmur of whispered prayers and trembling sobs ripples through the crowded, suffocating room. The air is rich with the smell of wet wool, fear, and snuffed wax. The cramped stone walls press in on us. Families clutch charms with white-knuckled desperation. Mira buries her face into my skirts, stifling quiet hiccups of terror. I thread an arm around her thin shoulders, biting down on my own lip to hold back my trembling. Around us, aged voices whisper the old stories, the litany of feasts past, of blood spilled to sate the Vracken's insatiable hunger, of nights when even the mightiest charm failed, turning to cold ash in trembling hands. An old woman near me whispers of her own grandmother, taken from this very chapel, her screams the last thing anyone ever heard. Above, outside, the storm shifts. The howling cuts abruptly short. The wind seems to hold its breath. The snowflakes hang, frozen mid-air like shattered glass shards. The silence that creeps beneath the chapel doors is a living thing. It claws at my bones, thick and heavy, worse than any storm. The children abruptly stop crying. Faces pressed to the frosted glass of the high windows, eyes wide in mute terror. Adults hold still, breaths caught in their chests, ears straining for the unseen threat that now waits just outside our sanctuary. A single ragged scream splits the silence from the far side of the village. A child calling a mother's name, desperation twisting the sound into something inhuman before it is abruptly cut off. Footfalls rush past outside, pounding through brittle ice. The wind screams again, a savage, shrieking sound tangled with gnarled, guttural voices that are not human, and the sharp, sickening scrape of metal claws on fragile bone. The chapel shudders beneath the storm's renewed wrath. The candle flames flicker wildly in the sudden, violent draught. One by one they gutter and die, swallowed by shadows pooling like ink, plunging the room into a deeper gloom with each extinguished light. I press Mira closer still, the heavy silence grinding between us like sharpened stone. Without warning, the doors shudder violently, the thick oak groaning under a titanic, impossible force. A thunderous crash splinters the fragile quiet into 1,000 shards. The chapel plunges into impenetrable, absolute darkness.
Chapter 2. Drazien. The ancient oak doors, which have stood for centuries against the mountain's fury, explode inward under the force of my warrior's ram. The wood splinters with a sound like cracking bone, and the fragile quiet within the human sanctuary is shattered into 1,000 screaming shards. I am the first to step across the threshold, my dark armor cold and silent against the sudden, brief bloom of candlelight from within. The darkness that follows is absolute, a physical presence, as the violent rush of wind from the storm at my back extinguishes the last of their pathetic flames. For a moment, There is only the roar of the blizzard and the sound of 100 frantic, panicked heartbeats in the blackness before me. I can smell them. The scent of their mass terror is a sharp, acidic tang that cuts through the cloying odor of snuffed wax and damp stone. It is the scent of a successful hunt. My warriors pour in behind me like living shadows, their own torches flaring to life, casting a writhing, blood-red light across the scene. What the light reveals is what I've seen 100 times before. A huddled mass of prey, their faces pale and slick, with a mixture of sweat and tears in the flickering light. They are trapped, cornered, their eyes wide with the certainty of their doom. A low, guttural growl of satisfaction rumbles through my warriors. The hunt is over. The feast begins. The order is unspoken, an instinct shared between us. They fall upon the villagers, their movements efficient and brutal. The chapel, a place of quiet prayer only moments ago, erupts into a cacophony of horror. A warrior backhands a man who tries to stand, the sickening crunch of his jawbone echoing in the chamber. A woman lets out a high-pitched shriek as she's dragged away from her children, her nails scraping uselessly against the cold stone floor. The sounds of chains rattling and flesh meeting armored fists are a familiar symphony, the music of the solstice. I stand back and observe this initial culling, this harvest of fear, and feel nothing. No hunger, nor triumph. Only the hollow, grinding obligation that has been drilled into my bones across 400 years of these rituals. Tonight, the blood must flow. Tradition demands it. Amidst the carnage, my attention is drawn to a specific point of violence. I see Kale, one of my more brutish warriors, cornering a small, trembling child against a stone pillar. He's enjoying her terror, a predator playing with his food, his fangs bared in a cruel smile as he slowly reaches for her. It is a predictable, tedious display of dominance. The predictable shatters. A human voice, fierce and raw with a defiance that has no place here, rips like a blade past my ears. No! The cry is not a plea. It is a command. My gaze snaps forward, my senses narrowing, the surrounding chaos fading to a muted roar. A girl. She is small, delicate, far too small for this night's horrors. But she is ablaze with a furious, impossible light. She throws herself between Kale and the child, her arms wrapped tight around the trembling thing like a fragile shield. Her hands shake, her body trembles, but her eyes, God's, her eyes, burn with an unbroken, suicidal fire. She is not cowering. She is not begging. She is a cornered wolf, ready to fight a battle she knows she cannot possibly win. This act is a profound, illogical defiance of the natural order that governs this night. It makes no sense in my world of pure survival. Varric's sneer cuts the air next to me, his voice a rough rasp of claws on stone. A fragile thing for a warlord. The laughter from his sycophants is a brittle, ugly sound. My fury at his insolence is cold and immediate, but my focus remains locked on the girl. She is an anomaly, a spark of chaos in my cold, orderly world, and it is infuriatingly, dangerously compelling. Kale, enraged that this human dares to interfere, shoves her aside. She stumbles, her head cracking against the stone pillar, but she scrambles back up, placing herself in his path once more. He roars in frustration and raises his armored hand to strike her down. The sight of Kale's hand rising against her is the final trigger. My movement is not a conscious thought, but an instinct, a blur of shadow and steel that is over before most in the room can even register it. I'm across the chapel floor, in a heartbeat. I do not stop Kale with a word. I seize the arm he raised against her and twist. The sound of the bones in his forearm snapping is loud and wet, a sharp crack that cuts through the din of the chapel. He howls in pain and cradles his ruined limb, his eyes wide with shock and terror. I shove him back into the crowd of my stunned warriors, a clear and brutal message to all. She is not to be touched. I turn my attention back to the girl, She stares up at me, her defiance momentarily replaced by stunned disbelief, her chest heaving with ragged breaths. I reach for her, and my grip closes around her wrist like iron. The shocking heat of her skin, the frantic bird-like pulse that beats against my gauntlet, the impossible fragility of her bones, it all sends a jolt through me. For a moment, the entire chaotic world of the chapel goes silent. The screams, the rattling chains, the howl of the storm, it all fades away until the only thing I can hear, the only thing that exists, is the defiant, rapid beat of her heart. "This one is mine," I growl, my voice low, carved from ice in command. It is not a request. It is a statement of ownership that freezes every Vraken in the room. The storm screams louder, but in the chapel, the world holds its breath. Kale, clutching his broken arm, retreats into the shadows, his head bowed in submission. The other soldiers nearby avert their eyes, their expressions flickering with doubt and unease. No one dares challenge me. She belongs to me, chosen by an impulse I do not understand but will not deny.
Chapter 3. Solène. His grip is a manacle of iron and leather around my wrist. The world, which had been a chaotic storm of screams and violence, narrows to this single, terrifying point of contact. I can feel the heat of his body through his cold armour, smell the scent of the storm, and something else, something ancient and predatory, clinging to him. His crimson eyes are fixed on me, and in their depths I see not the wild bloodlust that contorts the faces of his warriors, but a cold, absolute, and far more terrifying certainty. The sounds of the chapel being torn apart continue around us, the splintering of pews as a resisting villager is thrown against them, the high-pitched shriek of a child torn from its mother's arms, the weeping of my people. But it all feels distant, a muffled backdrop to the silent, suffocating bubble of my own terror. I have been separated from the herd, singled out by the alpha predator, and I do not know if this is a death sentence or something infinitely worse. A warrior approaches the predator called Drazian, his head bowed in deference, his arms laden with heavy black iron chains. The links are thick as my thumb, crudely forged and dark with what looks like old, dried blood. Hanging from them are small, carved bone talismans that clink together with a dead, hollow sound. Drazian gives a curt nod, and the warrior turns to me. My blood runs cold. Drazian still holds my one wrist, so the warrior grabs my other arm, his grip brutal and bruising. He wraps the heavy freezing chain around my wrist, the metal biting into my skin. The sheer weight of it is staggering. He fumbles with a heavy lock, and with a loud, final click that echoes in the ruined chapel, my fate is sealed. I am no longer merely a captive. I am his property, branded and bound. He repeats the process on my other wrist, a mirror of the first, until I am shackled like a beast for slaughter. Drazian finally releases me, and I stumble back, the weight of the chains pulling my shoulders down. I am a part of a long, terrible history, another link in the endless chain of human suffering at the hands of these monsters. The Vraken herd us from the ruined chapel, with kicks and harsh guttural commands. The moment I step back outside, the blizzard attacks me with renewed fury, a physical blow of wind and ice. The transition from the hot, crowded and bloody chapel to the biting cold is a shock that steals the breath from my lungs. As the Vraken drag us from the ruins of our sanctuary, the memory of the first few seconds of the attack plays in my mind like a waking nightmare. The thunderous crash of the doors, the plunge into absolute darkness, the first wave of screams. Amidst the terror, I remember Rodel's voice, not panicked, but a harsh, desperate roar near the back wall. "The high window! Break it! Go!" I remember the distinct, sharp sound of shattering glass a moment later, almost lost beneath a woman's shriek and the guttural snarls of the first Vraken warriors. I don't know if he made it. I don't know if anyone did. But the thought of Rodel, broken and bleeding but alive and free in the blizzard, is a tiny, defiant spark I hold onto in the encroaching darkness. The snow underfoot is no longer pure white. It is a churned, trampled mess, stained with the spreading crimson of those who resisted and were cut down where they stood. The sight that greets me is a vision of hell. My village, my home, is burning. Flames from a dozen cottages roar into the night, casting a hellish orange glow against the swirling white of the blizzard, the smoke a black, choking shroud that tastes of ash and sorrow. Doors hang open like mouths frozen in a silent scream. We are chained together, a long, shuffling line of despair, and forced to march through the heart of our own destruction. The sounds are a symphony of misery, the quiet, hopeless weeping of the captives, the sharp, guttural commands of the Vraken, and the constant, rhythmic, and soul-crushing clanking of our chains. A man near the front of the line stumbles and falls to his knees in the deep snow. A Vraken warrior does not stop to help him up. He lets out an impatient snarl and delivers a brutal kick to the man's ribs, the sound a dull, wet thud. The man groans, and the warrior simply drags him by his chains, his face ploughing through the bloody snow until he can find his feet again. Mira is beside me, her small, cold hand clutched tightly in my own. My entire world narrows to a single desperate focus, keeping her upright. I will not let her fall. I will not let them drag her. The march is a brutal ordeal of pain, cold, and a growing, gnawing hopelessness. The mountain looms before us, a jagged black shadow against the storm-dark sky. We are being marched toward a gaping black maw in its side, an entrance that looks less like a cave and more like the mouth of some great sleeping beast. The cold seeps into my bones, a deep, unshakable chill. But as we approach that dark entrance, I know a far worse cold awaits us within. The entrance to the cavern feels like the throat of some great beast, swallowing us whole. The moment we cross the threshold, the howling of the storm is cut off, replaced by a heavy, echoing silence and a profound change in the air. The clean, sharp cold of the winter night is gone, supplanted by a thick, hot, foul stench that catches in the back of my throat. The smell of old, spilled blood, of rendered fat, of unwashed bodies, and of something else, a deep, earthy wrongness. This is the Vraken's lair, and it smells of death. We are herded down a steep, spiralling path, the rock slick with a constant, greasy moisture that makes every step treacherous. The path is lit not by clean flame, but by blood torches, great bundles of cloth soaked in animal fat that burn with a sputtering, greasy, red-gold light. They cast monstrous, dancing shadows that writhe and leap on the cavern walls, making it seem as if the very rock is alive and mocking us. And then I hear it, a constant, hollow, clinking sound, a ghostly music that scrapes at my sanity. I look up and see them, hundreds, no, thousands of bone chimes hanging from the cavern ceiling. They are made from what look like the finger bones and vertebrae of small animals, and perhaps humans. They twist in the faint draughts, their sound an unnerving, whispering lament for all the lives that ended in this terrible place. The deeper we descend, the louder the sound becomes, a constant reminder of the fate that awaits us. My heart hammers in my chest, a frantic drum against the chilling melody of the bones. A new sound begins to bleed through the chimes, a low, rhythmic chanting from far below us, punctuated by the beat of a heavy drum. It is the sound of the feast, the savage celebration we are being brought to as the main course. The narrow tunnel finally opens up, and my breath is stolen from my lungs. Before me is a cavern so vast it feels like the night sky has been trapped underground. Obsidian pillars soar up into an unseen darkness. And in the centre, surrounded by hundreds of pale, watching Vraken, is a lake of perfectly still, black water. It is a cathedral built to honour cruelty, and we are the sacrifices upon its altar. The scale of it, the terrible ancient grandeur, crushes the last of my hope. A cold breath, a whisper that is not real, brushes my ear. You don't belong here, little one. And I know, with a cold, absolute certainty, that I have been marched into my own grave.
Chapter 4. Drazien. The chamber breathes under the weight of shadows, torches flickering like frantic whispers against the damp stone. I stand among my kin. The heart of our solstice writes alive with the promise of blood and prophecy. Bloodlight from the fat-soaked torches dances across the surface of the reflection pool, casting haunting, distorted shapes that twist and sway. I feel an ancient charge crackle through the air, heavy with the metallic scent of spilled blood and the oppressive breath of the god Akeldama. Around me, Vrakan nobles are draped in ceremonial garb, their faces masks of pious reverence that I know hide ambitions as sharp as daggers. There is reverence, yes, but beneath it lies an undercurrent of dread, thick enough to choke on. Tonight the god speaks, or she does not. For most, her silence is a mark of disgrace. For me, it has always been a welcome quiet. The high priestess begins her low, guttural chant, her voice a dry rasp that scrapes against the stones. The blood drums begin their slow, heavy rhythm, a heartbeat for the mountain itself. I have stood here for 400 solstices. I have watched generations of nobles posture and preen, feigning visions to secure their status. I do not expect her voice, not for me. I have carved my rule from the flesh and bone of my enemies, not from the cryptic whispers of a silent god. My power is my own. The nobles around me shift, caught in the same ritualistic thrall, their faces painted with a mixture of fear and naked desire. I lean forward, my duty compelling me, the world narrowing to the dark, bottomless depths of the reflection pool before me. My breath catches as I gaze down into the still, black water, a perfect mirror of the darkness above. I perform the ritual, emptying my mind, and wait for the vision of Akeldama that has eluded me all my life. But the pool does not hold the face of the god. It ripples. The image of the cavern ceiling blurs and then reforms, and I stumble back a half step as a shock, cold and sharp as a shard of ice, strikes through me. Not the god, not one of her monstrous visages or a symbol of her power. A human, a mortal girl with pale skin, dark hair, and defiant gray eyes that slice through the vision with a fierce, impossible tenacity. Solène, the girl from the chapel. My breath turns to ice in my chest. A mortal reflected in the sacred pool? It is impossible. It is blasphemy. This cannot be, and yet here she is. Her image shimmering like a trapped star in the godly veil, a fated connection I never sought. Around me, the chanting falters. The priestess's eyes are fixed on my face, on my shock. A sign has been given, she intones, her voice reverberating through the now silent chamber. My hand clenches around the obsidian goblet in my fist, the cool metal digging into my palm as I anchor myself to this new, world-shattering reality. The image of her face is burned into my mind, a brand on my very soul. A path has been chosen for me, and the dread that settles in my gut is an embrace tightening around my heart, squeezing an acknowledgement of an unbidden truth. I cannot defy what has been set in motion without courting madness. The priestess's gaze fixes on me, sharp as winter. What did you see, warlord? Her question hangs in the air, a blade poised over my head. The eyes of every noble in attendance are on me, heavy with expectation and judgment. What did I see? I saw an impossibility. I saw a human face in a place only the divine should appear. I saw the girl whose suicidal defiance in the chapel had snagged on my soul like a thorn. The stories are clear. When Akeldama wills a union, the face of the chosen appears in the water. But it has never been a human. To declare it would be to invite ridicule and accusations of madness. To deny it would be to defy the god herself, an act of hubris that could shatter my rule. My mind, honed by centuries of brutal strategy, races. This is not a political problem to be managed. It is a divine command to be obeyed or defied, and I have never been one to defy a source of true power. This is a test, a weakness to be exploited, or a new strength to be seized. My decision is not a choice. It is a reflex, the instinct of a predator that has just been granted the ultimate prize. I will not show weakness. I will not show confusion. I will show absolute, unshakable authority. I turn from the priestess, my back to the sacred pool that still holds the girl's impossible image. I ignore the nobles' expectant faces. My gaze sweeps over the hall until it finds the captain of my personal guard, standing stoic and ready by the main archway. My voice is not a request. It is a command that cuts through the sacred silence like a sword stroke, sharp and absolute. "Bring me the human girl," I command, my voice low but carrying to every corner of the chamber. "The one from the chapel. Bring her before the assembly now." A shockwave of confusion and alarm rips through the gathered Fraken. A collective gasp, a rustle of silks and armor, a cacophony of furious, disbelieving whispers. They expected a pronouncement of a holy vision, a cryptic prophecy to be debated for the rest of the night. They did not expect me to interrupt the most sacred rite of the solstice to summon a piece of human chattel. The high priestess takes a step forward, her face a twisted mask of outrage. "Warlord, this is sacrilege! The rite is not concluded!" I silence her with a single cold glance. My will is the only right that matters now. The captain of my guard bows his head without hesitation. His loyalty is to me, not to a priestess, and vanishes into the corridors with two of his men. Now there is nothing to do but wait. The tension in the hall is a living thing, coiling and tightening with every passing second. The nobles stare at me, their awe and fear warring with their outrage. They do not know what I am doing, and that ignorance is the cornerstone of my power. I stand before them, a pillar of cold authority, my face an unreadable mask, while inside a fire I thought long dead roars to life. The god has given me a sign, and I will claim what is mine. The wait is not long. The sounds of a struggle echo from the corridors, followed by the heavy tread of armored boots. The captain of my guard returns, his face grim. He and his men drag a terrified but still defiant Solène into the great hall. They force her to her knees on the cold marble floor before the assembly, her simple captive's dress a huge contrast to the opulent robes of the nobles, who now stare down at her. Her hands are bound, her hair is a wild tangle, but her chin is lifted, and her gray eyes, when they meet mine, are still filled with that same beautiful suicidal fire. Seeing her here, in the flesh, a breathing, trembling reality, solidifies the vision into an undeniable truth. She is even more potent than her reflection. Lady Sorexa, seeing this unprecedented breach of tradition, seizes her opportunity. Her laughter rings out, sharp and clear, slicing through the tense silence. "A fragile pet for a warlord?" she calls out, her voice dripping with scorn as she circles Solène like a predator. "You interrupt a sacred rite to play with your food, Drazienne? Has your obsession finally driven you mad?" Her words are the perfect opening. I ignore her and address the entire assembly, my voice a thunderous declaration that shakes the very stones. I point a single, armored finger from the still glowing pool to the kneeling girl on the floor. "The god has shown me her will," I proclaim. "Priestess, you asked what I saw. I saw her." The nobles gasp, their eyes darting from me to Solène to the pool, the impossible truth dawning on them. Sorexa's mocking smile falters. I stride forward until I'm standing over Solène, a dark shadow of ownership. I look down at her, then out at my court, my voice dropping to a low, unyielding growl that carries the weight of an unbreakable oath. This is the face I saw in the reflection. I let the words sink in, let the sacrilege of it burn them. Then I deliver the final, tradition-shattering blow. She is mine, by reflection and by right.
Chapter 5. Solène. The icy ribs of the iron cage pressed into my back, a stark reminder of my solitary confinement. Moments before, I had been ripped from the quivering, tear-stained cluster of captives, deemed a singular exhibit for the Vrakan nobles. They drifted past, their forms adorned in shimmering silks and formidable armour, their gazes like daggers, dissecting my fear. A piercing, terror-stricken shriek tore through the cavern's oppressive silence. Mira's voice. My heart, a cold, hard knot in my chest, clenched in a spasm of guilt and despair. I had failed her. I had failed everyone. Death, a tangible presence, permeated the air, thick and metallic like fresh blood, a sickening counterpoint to the oily smoke that billowed from hundreds of candles, rendered from the stolen fat of their victims. The stench of rendered flesh and fear was an unbearable assault on my senses. The cage door, a grotesque maw of rusted iron, screeched open, the sound echoing through the cavern like a banshee's wail. 2 hulking Vrakan warriors, their armour emblazoned with the same predatory claw symbols that marked the one called Varik, seized my arms. Their grip was brutal, their clawed hands digging into my flesh, each digit a searing point of agony as they dragged me from my prison. My bare feet, raw and bruised, scraped against the unforgiving stone floor, the cold radiating from the very bones of this ancient mountain seeping into my marrow. I stumbled, my thin, threadbare village dress offering no solace against the biting chill, nor any protection from the sharp edges of their cruelty. Each jarring step was a descent deeper into an abyss of despair, the cavern walls seeming to press in, mirroring the suffocation of my hope. They haul me toward the centre of the vast cavern, a space that feels like a cathedral built to honour cruelty. Obsidian pillars soar into the darkness above, and the walls are draped with the chain of night, each iron link representing a year of monstrous survival. In the heart of the chamber lies the reflection pool, a circle of black water so still it looks like a solid piece of polished night. The assembly of Vrakan parts before us, hundreds of pale, predatory faces turn to watch, their eyes glowing like embers in the shifting blood-gold light of the torches. My gaze sweeps over them, the beautiful, cruel women in their bone-adorned gowns, the scarred warriors with fangs bared in silent sneers. This is it, the moment of sacrifice. My knees slam onto the cold marble floor before the pool, the impact jarring me to the bone. They force me to kneel before the entire assembly, a solstice offering laid at their feet. From the throng, Drazian emerges. The warlord moves with a chilling grace, his presence silencing the murmurs around him. His silver-black hair seems to drink the torchlight, and his crimson eyes pin me, making me feel like the only creature in this monstrous world. He stops before me, a titan in dark armour inlaid with bone. "Look at me," he commands, his voice a low rumble that cuts through the cavern's din. Trembling, I force my head up. To meet his gaze is to stare into a predator's soul, cold and ancient, and utterly without mercy. "Your name," he states. It is not a question. "Solène," I whisper, the name a fragile human sound in this place of monsters. Drazian turns from me, his voice thundering across the chamber, each word an earth-shattering decree. "This is the one the god showed me," he announces. He pauses, letting the shock ripple through his people before delivering the final, impossible blow. "My mate!" Chaos erupts, a wave of hisses and furious whispers sweeps through the nobles. Mate, the word makes no sense. I am prey, destined for the blood feast, not this bizarre, horrifying ceremony. From the crowd, a striking Vrakan noble with obsidian hair and sharp emerald eyes steps forward. It is the one Drazian called Lady Syrexa. "The reflection was tainted," she cries, her voice dripping with venom. "The warlord shames us with his obsession over a human pet. Akeldama would never choose such weakness." Nobles murmur their agreement, the dissent growing louder, but Drazian simply raises a hand, and the cavern falls silent once more. His authority is absolute. Priests in dark robes approach, carrying heavy ceremonial chains. They are silver black, the links thick and cold, hung with small carved bone talismans that clatter with a sound like chattering teeth. Before I can react, they drape the chains across my shoulders. The weight is immense, a physical declaration of ownership that steals the air from my body. I am marked, his property. The finality of it, the cold metal, the shocked silence, the burning intensity in Drazian's eyes, snaps something inside me. The fear that has frozen my veins for days melts away, replaced by a surge of white-hot rage. This is not fate, this is theft. Staggering under the weight of the chains, I push myself to my feet. I face the warlord who has claimed me, my chin lifted, the ember of defiance in my soul finally catching fire. "I am not chosen," I spit, my voice ringing with a strength I didn't know I possessed. "I am stolen." I glare at the sea of monstrous faces, at their beautiful, cruel god reflected in the black pool, and I curse them all. A curse on your god, and a curse on your traditions. A collective gasp goes through the Vrakan, a human daring to defy them on their most sacred night. But Drazian does not move. He does not snarl or strike me down. He simply watches me, and in the crimson depths of his eyes, I see his hunger sharpen, his cold authority transmuting into a possessive fire. He steps closer, invading my space until I can feel the heat radiating from his armor. He leans down, his voice a quiet, dangerous whisper meant only for me. "You can hate me, little one," he murmurs, the sound a silken threat. "You can curse my god all you wish." His gaze drops to the chains settled over my shoulders. But the reflection does not lie. He looks back into my eyes, and I see the terrifying truth of my new reality. "You are mine," he finishes, his voice dropping lower still, "and I will keep you alive, even if you spend every second of it wishing for death." He turns and walks away, leaving me standing there, chained and claimed. The Vrakan stare, some in awe, others in fury, at the human who cursed them and the warlord who bound her to his side. I tremble, not with fear any longer, but with the horrifying realization that death would have been a mercy. I am not a sacrifice to be slaughtered. I am a prize to be kept, claimed, not free. My longest night has only just begun.
Chapter 6. Drazian. The drums thunder through the cavern like the heartbeat of some ancient forsaken god, their primal rhythm echoing off the black ice stalactites that hang like fangs from the shadowed ceiling. I stand beside the obsidian dais, my arms crossed over my armored chest, centuries of existence turning this spectacle into a rote obligation, a tedious dance of blood and ritual. The first reenactment unfolds before us, a hollow tableau of brutality meant to honor Akeldama's awakening, the night she rose, fangs bared, and bathed Stonehenge in the crimson tide of human slaughter. Masked warriors prowl the stage, their forms cloaked in tattered hides and bone-adorned armor, the lead actor crowned with antlers carved from the bones of ancient beasts, dipped in fresh blood that drips like tears onto the marble floor. They move with predatory grace, reenacting the god's dominion over life and death. The turning, the slaying, the crossing into our shadowed realm of Prathika. The air is toxic with the sharp metallic tang of blood, mingled with the acrid smoke of fat-soaked torches that cast flickering red-gold light across the assembly. Bone chimes dangle from the walls, clinking in the drafts like the whispers of ghosts, adding a haunting melody to the carnage. Realism is the essence of this rite, the old way that binds us in our eternal hunger. Human captives are dragged forth as living props, their pleas swallowed by the drum's relentless pulse. The first offering, a trembling man with wild eyes, is forced to his knees. A masked Vrakan's blade flashes, slicing his throat in a practiced arc. Blood arcs out, steaming in the chill air, pooling on the stage in glossy rivulets that reflect the torchlight like liquid rubies. The assembly roars, a feral chorus that vibrates through my bones. I watch, unmoved, my crimson eyes impassive. This is survival, the tradition that has kept us strong through endless winters. I have upheld it without question, my will an iron chain binding my people. Yet tonight, my gaze betrays me. It drifts from the stage, seeking her out like a moth to a forbidden flame. Selene. She stands chained beside a pillar where my guards have positioned her, the silver-black links of the mate claim draped heavily over her slender shoulders. They contrast starkly with her pale skin, gleaming against the simple dress that clings to her form, torn and stained from the raid. Her wide gray eyes are locked on the horror unfolding, her delicate features twisted in revulsion, lips parted in a silent gasp, cheeks flushed with a mix of terror and that unyielding ember of defiance. It's the same fire that ignited in her when I claimed her from that pathetic human chapel, the same spirit that made her spit curses at our God, at me. My claim on her has already ignited whispers of scandal through the court, dark murmurs in the shadowed alcoves. To them she is a fragile trinket, a human pet unworthy of a warlord's consort. To me she is the vision that stared back from Akeldama's sacred pool, her face rippling in the black water instead of the gods. A sign, a fate. To deny it would invite madness, an unraveling of the soul I've guarded for over 4 centuries. My possessiveness coils tighter, a dark serpent in my chest. Movement catches my eye. 2 warriors, their armor etched with Varric's mocking claw sigils, detach from the throng. They slink toward Selene, their intent as sharp as their fangs, to haul her into the reenactment, to make my chosen a sacrificial prop in this macabre play. It would be the ultimate insult, a brazen challenge to my authority, a way to paint me as weakened by my obsession. The assembly watches, breath held, sensing the tension. A glacial rage surges through me, eclipsing the hollow detachment of moments ago. It is possessive, primal, absolute. My authority is a blade that bends lesser Rakan to my will, but this fury is deeper, more intimate. She is mine. The word thunders in my mind, drowning out the drums. I'm in motion before my guards can react, striding across the blood-slicked marble with the inexorable force of a winter storm. The crowd parts like shadows fleeing light, eyes widening in shock. I reach the warriors as their clawed hands close on her chains. No words are needed. I seize the first by the shoulder, my grip crushing bone beneath armor, and hurl him back. He crashes into a pillar with a crack that echoes like thunder, crumpling in a heap. The second hesitates, his hand inches from her arm. He meets my gaze, the promise of annihilation in my crimson eyes, and retreats into the masses, tail between his legs. Gasps ripple through the hall like wind through bone chimes. I have disrupted the sacred reenactment, shattered the rites flow for a mere human. Blasphemy. Scandal. I ignore it all. My hand clamps around Selene's arm, firm but not bruising, and I yank her away from the stage, away from the reek of fresh death and the hungry stares. She stumbles in my wake, the chains clattering like accusing bells with each step. We burst through archways of carved black stone, veined with frozen veins of ice that glitter like trapped stars. The great hall's roar fades behind us, replaced by the echoing quiet of my private chambers. I fling the heavy stone door shut. It booms like a crypt ceiling, locking out the world. Here, the only illumination is a single brazier in the corner, its flames licking at the air with tongues of crimson and gold. Shadows dance across the marble walls, etched with ancient runes that whisper of blood oaths and eternal nights. The air is cooler, scented with the faint metallic chill of underground stone and the lingering spice of ash wine from earlier rites. I release her, and she staggers back, her chest heaving, gray eyes blazing with a storm of emotions. Her dark hair tumbles wildly over her shoulders, framing her pale face like a portrait of defiance. "Monster!" she hisses, her voice a tremor of fury that vibrates through the space between us. "You call this honor? Butchering the helpless like animals on an altar!" "I call it survival," I retort, my tone as cold as the black ice above. I step closer, towering over her fragile form. "A lesson your kind has forgotten in your feeble prayers and barred doors." "My kind doesn't feast on blood!" she shoots back, her small fists clenching at her sides. The chains shift with her movement, catching the firelight in silvery gleams. "We don't chain people like trophies and call them mate." Her words ignite something feral in me, her defiance a spark to the dry tinder of my temper. The air thickens, charged with the heat of our confrontation. "You are what the god revealed to me!" I growl, advancing until she's backed against the wall. "Your protests are as irrelevant as a snowflake in a blizzard." "Irrelevant?" She surges forward a half step, her breath coming in hot bursts. Our faces are inches apart now, her scent enveloping me. Clean winter air laced with the sweet undercurrent of her fear, and something warmer, more intoxicating. "You ripped me from my home, bound me in these cursed chains. My life is not irrelevant." The unthinkable happen. Her hand flies up, palm connecting with my cheek in a sharp slap. The sting is negligible, a fleeting spark against my scarred skin. But the audacity shocks me to my core. No one has dared strike me in 2 centuries. For a frozen heartbeat, I stare, crimson eyes widening. The shock fractures into a dark, coiling lust, rage and desire twisting into one. My control shatters like brittle ice. I snatch her wrist, my fingers encircling it completely, and slam her back against the cold marble. Her head thuds softly against the stone, a gasp tearing from her lips, pain mingled with fear. The chains dig into her shoulders, pressing against her skin like possessive lovers. Her body is pinned beneath mine, soft curves yielding to my unyielding frame. I feel the frantic flutter of her pulse under my thumb, the heat of her skin seeping through my armor. Her scent overwhelms me now, that heady mix of terror and unspoken heat. My fangs descend, aching with need as I lower my head to her throat. She freezes, a choked sob escaping, her body trembling against mine. But I don't claim her neck. Not yet. I twist her wrist gently upward, exposing the delicate inner skin, veins pulsing like hidden rivers. My breath ghosts over her flesh, and she shivers, a soft whimper escaping. With deliberate slowness, I sink my fangs into her wrist. The pierce is exquisite, sharp pain for her, but for me, it's ecstasy. Her blood floods my mouth, hot and vital, tasting of wild snowstorms and forbidden fire. It's the purest essence I've savored in an eternity, igniting every nerve. She arches against the wall, a convulsive shudder ripping through her, a tangle of agony, dread, and an erotic heat that surges between us like a dark current. I drink sparingly, savoring each swallow, my free hand pressing to her waist to hold her steady as her knees weaken. When I withdraw, fangs retracting with a reluctant ache, her blood lingers on my tongue like a sinful promise. She sags, the fight draining from her limbs, collapsing forward into my chest. Her face buries against my armor, trembling uncontrollably, her breaths ragged and uneven. I hold her there, one arm wrapping around her slight form, my own heart thundering with a violence born not of war, but of this consuming hunger. I glance at the twin puncture marks on her wrist, already blooming with a faint, possessive bruise. She is marked now, more indelibly than by any chain. And in this sanctum of shadows and flame, a terrifying realization claws at me. I, the warlord who fears nothing but vulnerability, am undone. This defiant human awakens a craving so profound it eclipses all else. A weakness cloaked in desire, a bloody romance forged in blood.
Chapter 7. Solène. I am still trembling when Drazian leaves me in his chambers, the ghost of his fangs a phantom ache on my wrist. The brief, sharp pain has melted into a strange, residual heat that pulses in time with my racing heart, a mark of his claim that feels both violating and terrifyingly intimate. I don't know what that was, an attack, a claiming, something else entirely, but it has left me hollowed out, my anger replaced by a deep, shivering uncertainty. The air in the room is cold and dead, the distant, muffled sounds of the feast, a low, rhythmic pounding like a great, hungry heart, growing steadily louder, a promise of the horrors to come. A short time later, a side door opens and a young Vraken girl slips in. She is pale and thin, with wide, frightened eyes that refuse to meet mine. In her arms, she carries a folded swathe of crimson silk. "The warlord commands that you be dressed for the feast," she whispers, her voice barely audible. I stare at the fabric. It's the colour of fresh blood, dark and rich. The thought of wearing it, of participating in their grotesque celebration, makes my stomach heave. "No," I say, my voice rough. I back away from her, shaking my head. "I won't." The servant girl flinches, her hands tightening on the silks. "Please," she begs, "he will be angry." "Let him be angry," I snap, my defiance returning in a hot rush. "I am not one of his dolls to be dressed up for slaughter." I try to push past her, to get to the main door, but it's no use. It is carved from solid stone and has no handle on this side. I am a prisoner. As this realization crashes down on me, the door swings open again, and Drazien fills the archway. His crimson eyes fix on me, then move to the unworn robes in the servant's hands. His expression darkens. "You will wear it," he says, voice a low command. "I won't," I repeat, lifting my chin. "I will not be a part of your disgusting feast." He moves into the room with predatory slowness. "You misunderstand. Your participation is not a request." He stops just before me, the sheer size of him blocking out the light from the corridor. "If you will not wear the silks, you will be paraded before the nobles wearing nothing at all." His threat hangs in the air, vile and absolute. I look at his cold, implacable face and see no bluff, no hint of mercy. I see only the promise of total humiliation. He would do it. He would strip me of the last shred of my dignity, presenting me to his court not as a mate, but as a broken animal. A cold wave of despair washes over me, chilling me more than the stone floor. It is a choice between two violations, and I must choose the one that preserves some small part of myself. My stomach twists with shame and helpless fury. Hating myself, hating him, I give the servant girl a single jerky nod. He watches, his arms crossed, as the trembling girl dresses me. Her fingers are clammy and cold as they work the fastenings. The crimson fabric feels like a second skin made of blood, cool and unnaturally heavy against my own. It smells faintly metallic, as if it were truly dyed in the suffering it represents. It is a ceremonial robe, sleeveless and cut low, leaving the heavy chains on my shoulders and the new marks on my wrist exposed for all to see. When she is finished, I feel less like a person and more like a sacrificial decoration, adorned for my own funeral. Drazien's gaze sweeps over me, a flicker of something possessive in his eyes, and then he gestures for me to precede him out the door. He leads me back into the main cavern, and the full, horrific grandeur of the blood feast hits me like a physical blow. The vast chamber is draped in crimson velvet banners that mirror the silk on my skin. Hundreds of fat candles burn from iron sconces, the flames symbolizing the stolen warmth of the living as they fill the air with oily black smoke. The low, ghostly music of bone chimes, made, I now realize with sickening certainty, from the knuckles of past human offerings, tinkles in the heated draughts, a constant, unnerving melody. The sound is punctuated by the pounding of hide drums, a savage rhythm designed to drown out screams. My eyes are drawn to the long feast tables piled high with grotesque dishes. I see the blood pudding of the longest night, a dark, quivering mass of congealed blood, marrow, and spiced roots. Beside it are platters of frozen hearts, raw, flash-frozen organs glistening on polished obsidian platters. Vrakan nobles toast each other with goblets filled with a dark, steaming liquid I now know is ash wine, a blend of wine, ash, and blood. But that is not the worst of it. Along the edge of the chamber, other human captives are lined up. One by one, they are forced forward, their arms held out as a Vrakan in priestly robes slices their wrists with a ritual knife. I see a face I recognize, a boy from a neighbouring farm, no older than 16, his eyes wide with disbelief and terror. His scream is swallowed by a swell in the music as his blood is drained into obsidian cups, which are then carried to the feasting nobles. Some captives collapse and are dragged away. Others are pushed back into line, weeping to be bled again. My stomach heaves violently, and I turn away, pressing a hand to my mouth. The world spins, a dizzying nightmare of red and black. The sounds, the smells, the sight of my people being treated like livestock. It's too much. The only thing keeping me upright is the heavy, possessive hand that Drazian places on my shoulder. His grip is like an iron anchor in the swirling chaos. I would rather die, I whisper, the words catching in my throat. I don't look at him, keeping my eyes fixed on the cold stone floor. I would rather die than join this feast. He doesn't respond. He simply tightens his grip, his thumb brushing against the cold metal of the chain on my shoulder. His silence is its own answer. My death is not on the menu tonight. My fate, I realise with a cold, sinking dread, is something else entirely. From the depths of the darkness of Prathika,
or clawing up from the realms of fantasy,
come the most fearsome beasts you have ever seen.
These monsters are done watching from the shadows.
Now, as they step into the light, something unexpected grips them.
Something even they can't fight off.
Love.
Vampires.
Demons.
Dark elves.
Gods.
Minotaurs. Creatures of light and dark.
They will protect their mates.
Do whatever needs to be done.
Morally grey heroes who will burn the world to protect the women who love them.
10 audiobooks.
Fall into over 60 hours of fantasy romance.
20 ebooks.
Over 1 million words of these brutes who will protect their women.
Even if they might destroy themselves in the process.
Get the immersive Prathika Fantasy Romance Bundle.
For 80% off, right now, dive into Prathika at a once-in-a-lifetime discount.
The first bundle to offer both ebooks and audiobooks on worldsofprathika.com. Prathika's magic is eternal, and this romantasy bundle will make it endless.
Chapter 8. Drazian. The girl, Selene, sways beside me, her face pale with a horror that is almost profound enough to be beautiful. It is the purity of her revulsion that captivates me, a reflection of a spirit still untainted by the necessary cruelties of survival that my kind have embraced for millennia. Her whisper of preferring death is a predictable human sentiment, and I ignore it. Death is a release she has not earned. Her purpose, the one that God showed me in the water, is yet to be fulfilled. My hand remains on her shoulder, a silent anchor and a claim all in one. She belongs to me now, by the God's will, and by my own consuming obsession, and what she would rather do is of no consequence. Attendants begin to move through the great hall, their movements synchronized by centuries of repeated ritual. They carry ornate obsidian baskets, filled to the brim with fresh snow, carried down from the surface storms. It is a sacred element, handled with a reverence usually reserved for the dead. A piece of the pure, cold, lifeless world above, brought into the hot, breathing, blood-soaked heart of our own. To have snow fall into the caverns through cracks in the ceiling is a rare blessing, but this, snow brought down intentionally for the feast, is a core part of the winter bonding. I watch as they scoop the pure white snow into black goblets already brimming with the warm, fresh blood of the captives. The dark crimson liquid steams in the cavern's cool air. A soft, sharp hiss sounds as the snow meets the heat, a violent marriage of purity and corruption. The contents of the cups turn into a pale pink slurry as the stolen warmth of life melts the sterile cold of the longest night. The goblets are passed through the assembly. This is the part of the feast that truly binds us, reaffirming the hierarchies and allegiances that hold our society together. I watch as a scarred, ancient warrior turns to his mate. They each slice a shallow cut on the other's wrist, pressing the wounds together for a moment before drinking from their shared cup. It is a display of both tenderness and predation. Noble pairs turn to one another in a public reaffirmation of their bonds. Lovers exchange cups, a pledge of loyalty known as winter bonding. The air grows thick with the metallic scent of blood and the low hum of chanted vows. It is a tradition as old as we are, a ritual of dominance and devotion that reaffirms the strength of our clans. A priestess approaches me, her head bowed, her movements slow and deliberate. She offers a full goblet on a silver tray. The blood within is anonymous, drawn from the collective pool of human offerings. It is a common vintage, a dead thing lacking a specific life, a specific spirit. Standard. Expected. For 400 years I have taken this cup, made the ceremonial toast, and felt nothing but the hollow obligation of my station. Tonight is different. I look at the cup, at the pale pink liquid, and feel a profound revulsion. Then my gaze shifts to Selene. Her gray eyes are wide, watching the rituals with a mix of terror and disgust. The twin marks my fangs left on her wrist are stark against her pale skin. A personal claim that makes this common offering feel like an insult. The memory of her taste, of fire and fight, and a life so potent it scorched my tongue, is still fresh. After tasting that, this stagnant blended draft is nothing more than ash in my mouth. No other blood exists for me but hers. I wave the priestess away. A murmur of confusion ripples through the nobles nearest to us, their eyes widening at this breach of protocol. I ignore them. I turn to Selene, my grip tightening on her shoulder as I pull her to face me. She flinches, her eyes locking on mine, her fear a palpable scent in the air, sharp and clean. "Give me your arm," I command, my voice a low growl. She hesitates, her gaze flickering down to her wrist, to the still healing marks. She understands what I am about to do. Her jaw tightens, that familiar, beautiful ember of defiance flaring in her eyes. But she is surrounded, chained, and utterly powerless. I see the war within her, the pride warring with the instinct for survival. Slowly, as if it weighs 1,000 pounds, she extends her arm. I draw a small, wickedly sharp blade from my vambrace. Its edge is polished obsidian, meant for ritual, cold and unforgiving. The entire assembly is watching now. The chanting has stopped. The only sounds are the crackle of fat candles and the distant, maddening chime of bone. In front of them all, in front of Syrexa, whose venomous gaze burns into me from across the hall, I lift Selene's arm. The skin is soft, her pulse a frantic, fluttering bird beneath my thumb. I press the cold blade to her wrist and make a shallow, clean slice. Her breath hitches, a sharp intake of pain, but she does not cry out. Dark blood wells from the cut, a perfect crimson jewel against her pale skin. Without hesitation, I lower my head and drink from her. I drink in front of the entire assembly. Her blood is a living thing on my tongue. It is just as potent as I remember, a defiant storm of fragile strength and fierce purity. It is the taste of her spirit, of the fire in her soul, of the innocence and the terror all at once. It sings in my veins, a song of life that drowns out the hollow rituals of my own kind. This is no mere tribute. This is a declaration, more powerful than any toast, more binding than any exchange of goblets. My action is unmistakable. To drink exclusively from one partner during the blood feast is a public declaration of a bond. I raise my head, her blood wet on my lips. The hall is in a state of shocked, absolute silence. Never has a Vraken, let alone a warlord, taken a human as a bonded source during the solstice feast. It is an act of supreme devotion or supreme blasphemy. He defiles the sacred rites! Lady Syrex's voice is a venomous hiss that slices through the silence. Her eyes, usually a sharp emerald, burn with an envious, hateful fire. He insults the god with this pet! The nobles erupt in furious whispers, some horrified, others fascinated. They believe me blinded by obsession, courting doom for a fragile human. Let them whisper. Their opinions are the buzzing of insects. I hold Selene's gaze, ignoring the chaos I have caused. Her eyes are wide with shock, pain, and something else I cannot decipher. I lift her bleeding wrist, presenting it to the assembly not as a wound, but as a holy relic. My voice cuts through their noise like thunder. No other blood exists for me but hers, I proclaim, the words a vow and a warning. I raise my own empty goblet high, then let it fall from my fingers to shatter on the marble floor. None else will ever suffice.
Chapter 9. Solene. My wrist throbs with a dull, rhythmic ache where Drazian cut me, a constant reminder of the shocking public declaration he made. After he proclaimed that no other blood would ever suffice for him, he released me and turned to speak with a scarred warrior, leaving me adrift in a sea of monsters. I feel hundreds of eyes on me, glowing like hostile embers in the gloom. His action has not made me safe. It has painted a target on my back. I am not just a captive to be pitied or an offering to be consumed. I am a symbol of his defiance, an affront to their traditions, and I can feel the weight of their hatred coalesce around me. As if summoned by the sheer force of their collective animosity, a group of Vraken women detaches from the crowd and begins to move toward me. Lady Syrexa is at their head, a vision in blood-dyed velvet, her emerald eyes glittering with a malice so sharp it feels like a physical thing. Her companions flank her, their movements a display of predatory grace. One is tall, with a perpetual sneer carved onto her beautiful face. Another has eyes like chips of obsidian, cold and empty. Their gowns rustle, and the bone charms woven into their elaborate hairstyles clink softly, a sound that mixes with the ghostly music of the chimes hanging from the ceiling. They don't hurry. They circle me slowly, deliberately, their expensive, cloying perfumes failing to mask the metallic scent of blood that clings to everything in this hall. The warlord's little reflection, Syrexa purrs, her voice deceptively sweet as she stops before me. Her gaze travels from the ceremonial chains on my shoulders down to my bare feet, a look of utter contempt on her perfect face. So pale, so fragile. Do you scream when he touches you, little thing? Her friends share a low, cruel chuckle. I remain silent, staring at a point on the far cavern wall, forcing my expression to remain blank. I will not give them the satisfaction of my fear. My heart hammers against my ribs, a frantic, trapped bird, but I will not let it show. Perhaps she enjoys it, the tall one says, her voice a lazy drawl. She reaches out a hand with a long, sharp nail and runs it over one of the silver links on my shoulder, the touch designed to be both a caress and a threat. Humans are animals, after all, easily tamed with a firm hand. Tell me. She leans closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Does he rut upon you like a beast, or does he pretend you are one of us? Their words are stones, each one a sharp, bruising impact against the fragile wall of my composure. They are trying to make me feel small, dirty, less than a person. A hot surge of shame and rage burns in my throat, but I swallow it down. I will not cry. I will not scream. I will endure. My silence only seems to amuse them more. Syrexa's gaze sweeps over the hall, and a cruel, calculating smile curls her lips. She is a stubborn little creature, Perhaps she needs a reminder of her place. She lifts a perfectly manicured hand and gives a sharp, imperious nod. "Bring the other one," she commands. My blood runs cold. A moment later, 2 guards drag a small, whimpering figure from the direction of the holding cells. It's Mira. Her face is smudged with dirt and fresh tears, her tattered villager's clothing a pathetic sight amidst the dark splendour of the Vrakan court. When she sees me, her eyes widen with a flicker of desperate hope, and that hope is the cruelest thing I have ever seen. "Look at that," Syrexa taunts, her voice dripping with mock pity. "It thinks you can protect it." She nods to her tall, sneering companion. The woman steps toward Mira, a look of bored cruelty on her face. She raises a hand, intending to strike the child for no reason other than to watch me suffer. Mira lets out a whimper, a tiny, hopeless sound of pure terror. Something inside me breaks. My promise to her flashes in my mind. We survive, no matter what. Before I can think, I move. It's not a calculated act, but a desperate, instinctive lunge. I throw myself between Mira and the striking Vrakan, shielding the child's small body with my own. "Leave her alone," I say, my voice trembling but firm, the words torn from my throat. The Vrakan woman's eyes narrow in contempt. She doesn't lower her hand. Instead, with a flick of her wrist, she redirects the blow. A sharp, stinging crack explodes against my cheek. The force of it snaps my head to the side, and a universe of white-hot pain erupts along my jaw. The coppery taste of blood fills my mouth. The cavern rings, the sound of the bone chimes dissolving into a high-pitched whine in my ears. The humiliation is as sharp as the pain itself. "Insolent pet," she hisses, drawing her hand back to strike me again. Before her hand can fall, a blur of motion explodes from the side. The atmosphere in the cavern changes in an instant. A wave of cold, lethal fury washes over us, and Drazian is there, moving like a storm. He seizes the woman who struck me by the arm, the sound of his armoured gauntlet clamping down on her fine silks, shockingly loud. Without a word, he slams her back against a stone pillar, with a force so brutal the very air seems to crack. A collective gasp ripples through the hall as the woman slumps to the floor, stunned and bleeding from her lip. "No one," Drazian snarls, his voice a low, lethal promise that cuts through the stunned silence. His crimson eyes sweep over Syrexa and her terrified companions, pinning them in place. "Touches what is mine." Syrexa's face twists with fury, but for the first time, she seems to fear him. She and her followers melt back into the crowd, leaving me standing with a trembling Mira clinging to my legs. The hall is utterly silent, save for the whimpers of the woman on the floor. Drazian turns to me, his rage still simmering like heat from a forge. He reaches out and gently takes my chin, turning my head so the torchlight illuminates my stinging cheek. He inspects the angry red mark, his expression unreadable. My heart is a wild drum against my ribs. I expect the coldness of a master inspecting his damaged property. I expect a rough touch, a harsh word. But as he stands there, his thumb brushing over my skin, I see it. His hand is trembling. It's a small, almost imperceptible tremor in his powerful fingers, but it's there. The feared Alpha Warlord, a being of absolute power and control, is shaking from the effort of his own restraint. In that moment, I glimpse the first real crack in his brutal, cruel exterior. The violence I just witnessed wasn't cold. It was hot, a furious, protective rage. And this gentleness now, this is what it costs him. I realise his violence shields as much as it threatens. He is a monster, but he just protected me. He sees me as property, but his touch is almost tender. My breath catches in my throat. The fear is still there, a cold stone in my stomach that will never truly go away. But now, tangled up with it, is a new, confusing, and profoundly dangerous feeling. A reluctant, unwanted fascination with the beautiful, terrible paradox of the monster who just killed for me.
Chapter 10. Drazian. The incident with Sorexa's follower sends a clear, brutal message through the court. The whispers quiet, the stares grow more cautious. They see the human is protected, but I can feel their resentment festering in the shadows, a poison that will inevitably find another way to the surface. Varric watches me from across the hall, his expression one of open contempt. Let them watch. They will learn the price of defiance. I look at Selene. The shock of my violent intervention has faded from her face, replaced by that strange, unwanted fascination I saw begin to dawn in her eyes. It is a look that both intrigues and unnerves me. It suggests a connection deeper than that of captor and captive, a thread of understanding that is as dangerous as it is compelling. A low, resonant horn blows, its mournful note echoing through the vast cavern. The feast halts. A conditioned silence falls over the assembly as conversations die and goblets are set down. It is time for the offering of silence. This is the most sacred hour of the solstice, a tradition that predates even my own long memory. On cue, attendants move through the hall, their movements synchronized and solemn. With long poles, they snuff out the hundreds of fat-soaked torches one by one. The red-gold light recedes, shadow by shadow, like a slow, dying tide. The cavern is plunged into a profound and sacred darkness, a blackness so complete it feels tangible, pressing in on all sides. The only illumination is the faint, ghostly gleam from the still, black surface of the reflection pool, a pale imitation of a distant moon. This is the hour we are meant to hear Akeldama's whispers, commands, prophecies, promises of power. For centuries I have stood in this silence and heard nothing. No whispers, no divine will. Only the rhythmic drip of water from unseen stalactites and the faint, mournful sound of the surface storms raging far above. I've never feigned visions to avoid the disgrace of being ignored by our God as so many of my nobles do. My power does not require the pretense of divine favor. It is a fact, solid and sharp as the blade at my side. But this time, the silence is not empty. She is standing only a few feet from me, a silent presence in the absolute dark. I cannot see her, cannot smell her scent over the lingering odor of blood and wine, but I can feel her. And then I can hear her heartbeat. It begins as a soft, steady rhythm, a living counterpoint to the dead silence of the cavern. It is a sound so intrinsically alive, it seems to defy the ancient, cold stone around us. The sound seems to bypass my ears and resonate directly in my own chest, a second pulse inside my ribcage. It grows louder, more insistent, until it drowns out everything else. The dripping water, the distant wind, the very possibility of a god's whisper. My world, once vast and empty, narrows to this single vital sound. The life pounding in her veins is a song, a siren call in the void. My fangs ache with a sudden, sharp hunger that has nothing to do with the feast and everything to do with her. When the hour ends, the horns blow once more, and the attendants relight the torches. The sudden return of light is jarring. I blink, my eyes adjusting, and the first thing I see is her face, pale and tense in the new light. The nobles around us immediately begin to boast of the great omens they witnessed, their voices loud and self-important. I hear one claim Akeldama promised him victory in the coming season's raids. Another speaks of a vision of Sorexa crowned in glory. I listen with utter contempt. They are liars and fools posturing for status. I, who command them all, say nothing. I heard only a human heart. As the feast resumes its chaotic energy, Varric approaches me. He moves through the crowd with a predator's purpose, his recently broken jaw a dark, bruised line on his face. He stops beside me, keeping his voice low so only I can hear. "The nobles whisper," he mutters, his words thick with insolence. "They say the warlord has grown deaf to the god, that he hears only the whimpering of his pet." I turn my head slowly to face him. "Let them whisper," I say, my voice dangerously soft. Their throats will be dry when it comes time to scream. Varric scoffs, a rough, ugly sound that shows his contempt for my threat. You were once a great leader, Drezien. Now you are a slave to a fragile human. You court doom, and you will drag us all down with you. His cruel red eyes finally meet mine, burning with a fanatic's certainty. Mark my words. She will be your ruin. His words strike a nerve deep inside me, a place where my own secret fear of weakness resides. My obsession with this human feels like the greatest vulnerability I have ever known. I dismiss him with a look that promises a slow, painful death should he ever overstep his bounds again. He retreats into the crowd, but his warning lingers like poison in the air. She will be your ruin. A fierce, desperate possessiveness rises in me, an instinct to crush the threat he represents and solidify my claim against all doubt, including my own. I stride through the crowd, my eyes searching for her. I find her near a pillar, watching the grim proceedings with a haunted look. I grab her arm, ignoring her startled gasp, and pull her into the deeper shadows behind the dais, away from the prying eyes of my court. I press her back against the cold stone, caging her in with my body. In the darkness, I pull her flush against me, my grip on her arms tight, almost desperate. Her heartbeat, the one I heard so clearly in the silence, kicks into a frantic rhythm against my chest. "Listen to me," I whisper, my voice a fierce vow against her ear. "She is my fate, my ruin. It does not matter. No god, no noble, no rival will ever take you from me." I hold her there, breathing in her scent as if it were the only air in this suffocating cavern. I'm trying to convince myself as much as I'm trying to claim her. She is not my ruin. She is mine, and I will not let her go.
Chapter 11. Solène. His words are a fierce vow whispered in the dark, his body a cage of iron and heat around me. I feel the desperate, possessive strength in his grip, and it sends a tremor of something other than fear through me. When he finally releases me and steps back into the torchlight, I am left breathless, my heart hammering against my ribs not just from terror, but from the sheer, raw intensity of his presence. That desperate vow. It wasn't just a threat to his rivals. It felt like a plea to the universe itself, a refusal to let go of the one thing that mattered. And that one thing is me. Later, after the endless feast has finally wound down into a drunken, bloody stupor, he leads me back to his chambers. The vast, cavernous room, with its polished marble walls and minimal, severe furnishings, feels more like a mausoleum than a home. It is a space designed for a being who feels nothing, a perfect reflection of the cold, solitary warlord I thought he was. He gestures for me to sit on a bench covered in dark, heavy furs, but I remain standing. My legs feel steadier now, my resolve hardened by the horrors and the strange, terrifying revelations of the night. He removes his armoured vambraces, setting them aside on a stone table with a heavy, final clank. The sound echoes in the silence. For a fleeting moment, as he flexes his bare forearms, I see him not as a monster, but as a warrior weary after a long and brutal night. The thought is so dangerous, so seductive, I immediately crush it. I cannot afford to see the man beneath the monster. "If you are not the monster you pretend to be," I say, the words quiet but clear, each one a stone thrown into the silent chamber, "then you will let me go." He stops what he is doing, his back still to me. I see the muscles in his shoulders tense. He turns slowly to face me, an unreadable expression on his features. I expect him to laugh, to mock my naivety, to tell me again, as he has before, that my feelings are irrelevant. I expect a swift, cold refusal. Instead, he offers only an unnerving silence. "You claim this is fate," I press on, my courage fueled by desperation and the last dregs of my former self. "You say your God chose me. But fate is not a cage, and a mate is not a slave. My voice gains strength, echoing slightly off the cold marble. If you have any honour, any mercy left in you after 400 years of this slaughter, you will release me. He watches me for a long moment, his crimson eyes searching my face as if trying to read the runes of a language he doesn't understand. Then he moves to the small table where his weapons are laid out in gleaming, deadly order. He picks up a knife, its blade forged from a dark, non-reflective metal, its hilt wrapped in worn leather. He walks back to me, the weapon held loosely at his side. My heart stumbles, my breath catching in my throat. I brace myself. I think he means to threaten me, to punish me for my audacity, to show me the futility of my defiance with the promise of pain. Instead, he stops before me and offers it, hilt first. "You want freedom?" he asks, his voice a low, gravelly rumble that vibrates through the floor. I stare at the weapon, utterly confused. My eyes flick from the deadly blade back to his face, searching for the trick, the trap. He takes my hand, his touch surprisingly gentle against my trembling skin, and presses the heavy hilt into my palm. He carefully curls my nerveless fingers around it until I am holding his own blade. Then he steps back, giving me space, and with one deliberate motion, he pulls the dark tunic he wears away from his chest, baring the pale, scarred skin over his heart. "Take it then," he says softly, his voice devoid of any mockery. "Strike me, your freedom is yours for the taking." I stand there, the knife heavy and impossibly cold in my hand, his heart a clear and open target just inches away. This is it, a real choice, a path to freedom. One quick thrust, and I could be free. I could avenge my people, my village, the children slaughtered in the chapel. I could avenge myself. My muscles tense. My knuckles are white where I grip the hilt, the worn leather digging into my skin. I lift the blade, its dark tip wavering in the air between us. My hand shakes violently. My entire arm trembles with the effort. I look into his eyes, and he doesn't look away. He simply waits, his gaze steady, unafraid, accepting. And in his crimson eyes, I see everything. The raid on my village, the terror in the chapel, the cold chains, the horrors of the feast. But I also see him intervening during the reenactment, shielding me from Syrex's cruelty, the tremor in his hand as he touched my face. I see a monster who has, for reasons I cannot comprehend, kept me alive when every other captive has been bled or butchered. He is my captor, my tormentor, and he is my protector. I cannot do it. A sob of frustration and shame tears from my lips, a ragged, ugly sound. The knife clatters from my nerveless fingers, ringing loudly, accusingly on the marble floor. I failed, my one chance for vengeance, for freedom, and I was too weak. A faint, rare smile touches his lips. It is not a smile of triumph, but of something softer, something that looks almost like a deep and profound sadness. "You could not," he whispers, as if he knew all along, as if he was watching a prophecy unfold. The words are not a taunt, but they humiliate me all the same. Tears of anger and confusion well in my eyes, blurring his image. "I don't know what you want from me," I cry, the words tumbling out before I can stop them, my control shattering. I've never been with a man. I don't know how to..." My voice trails off as I confess the last, most fragile piece of my former self. My cheeks flush with a burning heat. The admission hangs between us, a deeply personal truth I have never spoken aloud. My innocence feels like my final, ultimate weakness, a vulnerability I have just handed to a predator. But the cruel smile, the mocking retort I expect, never comes. The faint, sad smile vanishes from his face. His expression shifts, the cold authority and predatory hunger I know so well replaced by something else entirely, something deep and still and shockingly hesitant. For the first time, The feared Vrakan warlord looks uncertain. He takes a half-step toward me, then stops, as if unsure of what to do. The raw instinct I see in his eyes is not one to consume or to conquer, not the hunger of a male for a female. It is an instinct to shield.
Chapter 12. Drazine. The drums of the blood feast pulse like a primal heartbeat, their frenzied rhythm vibrating through the cavern's black ice walls, slick with the sheen of ancient frost. I stride through the shadowed corridors, my armor clinking softly, the weight of Selene's confession still clawing at the edges of my soul. I've never been with a man. Her words, raw and trembling, struck me with the force of a blade, slicing through centuries of conquest and hunger to unearth something I thought long buried. Protectiveness. It's a foreign ache, discordant against the brutal symphony of my existence. A warlord defined by dominance, not devotion. Yet her vulnerability, offered like a fragile flame in the dark, feels sacred, a trust I cannot betray. It terrifies me, this pull to shield rather than consume, and I fled my chambers to escape its grip. Now the feast hall is an inferno of excess. Fat-soaked torches blaze with crimson light, casting writhing shadows across obsidian pillars and bone-draped altars. Vrakan nobles, their pale faces flushed with ash wine and bloodlust, sway to the drum's relentless beat. Bone chimes clatter in the drafts, their low moans weaving a haunting melody with the screams of human captives dragged into the fray. Goblets of blood and snow pass from hand to hand, scarlet splashes staining velvet robes. The air is permeated with the metallic tang of slaughter, the sweet burn of spiced wine, and the primal musk of unleashed desire. This is the finale, the moment when control crumbles, and we surrender to the savage hunger that defines us. But I am apart from it all. The revelry feels hollow, the blood in the goblets tasteless compared to the singular craving that consumes me. Selene. Her face in the reflection pool haunts me, gray eyes fierce with defiance, lips parted in a curse against our god. She is no mere human to me. She is fate, a fire that threatens to burn away my iron will. The thought of her alone in my chambers, trembling under the weight of those silver-black chains, ignites a need so fierce it overrides centuries of tradition. I turn from the chaos, my decision a blade cutting through hesitation. I stride back to my chambers, the stone corridors echoing with my purpose. Selene looks up as I enter, her gray eyes wide with wariness, dark hair spilling like ink over her pale shoulders. The simple dress clings to her curves, torn from the raid, and the chains of my mate claim gleam like moonlight against her skin. She expects violence, death in the dark. I say nothing. My hand closes around her arm, firm but not cruel, and I pull her from the chamber, her bare feet whispering against the cold stone as she struggles to keep pace. I don't lead her back to the feast hall's carnage. Instead, I guide her into a shadowed side alcove, a hidden sanctum carved into the cavern's heart, where nobles steal away for secret trysts or whispered conspiracies. The roar of the feast is a distant thunder, muffled by walls veined with frost that glitter like frozen stars. A single torch burns low. The air is heavy with the aroma of ancient stone and the faint spice of ash wine lingering on my breath. I turn to her, my crimson eyes locking onto hers. Her chest heaves, breaths quick and shallow as she searches my face for intent. Fear flickers in her gaze, but beneath it there's a spark. Defiance, curiosity, a dangerous heat she doesn't yet understand. I reach into the pouch at my belt and draw out the ritual bindings. Not the cold iron chains of captivity, but soft, velvet cords, deep crimson, woven for the most intimate of Vrakan rites. They shimmer faintly in the torchlight, a promise of something sacred, something profane. "Give me your hands," I murmur, my voice low, a velvet growl that reverberates in the quiet. I seize her wrists in my iron grip, the velvet cords whispering against her skin like a serpent's promise as I bind them tight. Not loose, not symbolic, but a deliberate snare that marks her as mine, my plaything in this shadowed abyss. Her pulse hammers under my thumbs, a wild, frantic rhythm that echoes the thunder of my own ancient heart, long dead, yet now roaring to life with savage need. "Give me your hands," I growl, my voice a dark rumble laced with command, and she obeys, trembling like prey before the predator's maw. I press my lips to her knuckles, but it's no gentle kiss. My fangs graze the tender flesh, drawing a bead of blood that I lick away with deliberate slowness, savoring the coppery tang mixed with her fierce sweet essence. Sorry for the interruption. I know you were gearing up for a steamy scene, but it's way too hot for this platform.
If we want to keep sharing our stories for free, we have to abide by this platform's guidelines.
To get the full unabridged audiobook, go to worldsofprothika.com.
Browse through unabridged audiobooks, countless ebooks and bundles offered at a discount.
If the thought of me whispering all the dirty details into your ear isn't enticing enough, use discount code YouTube30 to get 30% off of all digital products.
Story after story, audiobook after audiobook, the worlds of Prothika are waiting for you.
Prothika's magic is eternal.
But unabridged, it's unforgettable.
The hunger that has ruled me for centuries settles into a possessive calm, a quiet certainty that she is mine, not by force, but by something deeper, something eternal. I lead her back to the great hall, the feast now waning, the air heavy with sated languor. As we step into the torchlight, heads turn. The nobles' gazes linger, no longer mocking or pitying. They see the faint, possessive marks of my fangs on her throat, the way my hand rests at her waist, the dazed fire in her eyes. They see the velvet cords, the ritual of a bond declared. She is no longer a doomed sacrifice, no longer a warlord's fleeting pet. She is my chosen, my bride, bound to me by blood and right in the holiest night of our kind. The whispers begin, a dark hymn to a new legend unfolding in the shadows of the longest night.
Chapter 13. Solène. The next cycle of torchlight and darkness finds me in a strange, hazy limbo. I exist in the cold marble confines of Drazian's chambers, a gilded cage within a larger one. My body aches with a phantom tenderness from his touch, a memory that sends confusing waves of heat and shame through me. The mark on my neck is a constant, invisible fire. The way the other Vraken now look at me, with a mixture of fear, resentful awe, and outright envy, is a constant reminder that I am no longer just a human captive. I am his. The thought is both a shield and the most profound cage I have ever known. A young Vraken servant brings me a tray of food, a bowl of spiced roots and a piece of cooked meat that I have no appetite for. While she is there, another small figure slips into the room, silent as a mouse. It's Mira. Her official role seems to be a serving girl, small enough to slip through the grand halls and corridors unnoticed, a forgotten piece of human chattel. Today, however, her eyes are wide with something other than her usual deep-seated fear. They hold a secret. She waits, hovering near the door, until the servant has bowed and departed. The moment the stone door clicks shut, Mira scurries over to me, her small hands clutching the front of her tattered dress. "Solène," she whispers, her voice urgent and breathless. "I heard something." I put down the spoon and give her my full attention. She tells me she was serving a group of older warriors in a lower mess hall, men who grumbled about the old days and the warlord's new obsession. They spoke of legends, of old stories passed down through generations. Stories of tunnels the first Vraken never sealed, narrow cracks and forgotten passages in the far reaches of the caverns, once used by human slaves to flee to the surface. Escape. The word is a physical blow, a punch to the gut that knocks the air from my lungs. For a single blinding moment, the dark, oppressive weight of this mountain prison vanishes. I see it. I feel it. The crisp, clean air of the surface world, the blinding white of the snow, the smell of pine trees and the wood smoke from my village hearth. Hope, a thing I had thought was dead and buried, surges through me with a fierce, painful intensity. We could get away. We could be free. But then, just as quickly, another image floods my mind. Drazian's face, his crimson eyes dark with a hunger that felt like worship. The surprising gentleness of his hands when he thought I might break. The way he shielded me from Syrex's cruelty and intervened in the brutal reenactment. The memory of his body against mine, a feeling so overwhelming it had erased all thought, leaving only raw, primal sensation. I lie awake long after the torches in the main hall have been dimmed, my mind a churning vortex of conflict and self-loathing. I am torn between the desperate, clawing need for freedom and the memory of my captor's touch. How can I even hesitate? The thought itself is a betrayal of my people, of my own past. He is a monster, a warlord who presides over a feast of slaughter, whose hands are stained with the blood of innocents. My survival is a fluke, a product of his bizarre obsession. But he kept me alive. He called me his. He looked at me as if I were the dawn. The conflict churns inside me, a nauseating mix of guilt and a strange, burgeoning loyalty I cannot comprehend. I should be planning, plotting, trying to find a way to use Mira's information. I should be using my new, strange status to move about, to search for these mythical tunnels. Instead, I am paralysed, haunted by the memory of my enemy's embrace and the hated desire it stirred within me. Some time later, a small sound cuts through my turmoil. It's a soft, muffled sob, coming from the corner of the room where a pallet of furs has been made for Mira. I rise and walk over to her. She is curled into a tight ball, her small body shaking with silent, desperate sobs. The tough, observant facade she maintains in front of the Vraken has crumbled, revealing the terrified 10-year-old girl beneath, a child who has seen too much death and has no hope left. Seeing her so broken, so utterly lost, cuts through my selfish confusion like a shard of ice. My own complicated, shameful feelings don't matter. Her life, her innocence, that is what is at stake here. She is a symbol of every captive, every child, every innocent person who has been dragged into this darkness. She is why I must be strong. I kneel beside her and gently touch her shoulder. She flinches, then sees it's me. "We're going to die here, aren't we?" she whispers, her voice thick with tears, a hopeless, childlike question that breaks my heart. I look at her small, tear-streaked face, and a new kind of strength settles deep in my bones. It is not the fierce, desperate courage of a freedom fighter, but the quiet, enduring resolve of a survivor. My purpose is suddenly crystal clear. I lift her chin with my fingers, forcing her to meet my eyes. "No," I say, my voice steady and sure, imbued with a certainty that surprises even me. "We survive, no matter what. The promise is as much for me as it is for her." In that moment, something inside me shifts. The cloying fog of fear and confusion does not vanish, but it begins to burn away, leaving something hard and clear in its place. My fear is fraying into steel. The next time a Vraken noble, one of Syrex's sneering followers, brushes past me in the corridor, I do not flinch or look away. I meet his gaze, and he is the one who falters, his eyes widening in surprise before he hurries on. I am no longer prey waiting for the slaughter. I am Solene, the survivor of the longest night, and my fight has just begun. Chapter 14. Solene. In the cycles that follow my promise to Mira, a fragile calm settles in my heart, a core of steel forged in the fires of despair. My fear has not vanished, but it no longer paralyzes me. It has become a whetstone, sharpening my senses, honing my resolve. I spend my time tending to the captives, my crimson silks a constant, mocking reminder of my station as I move through the grim squalor of the holding cells. The Vrakan nobles watch me, their whispers like the rustle of dry leaves, their hatred a cold weight in the air. But they do not approach. Drazian's savage protection and the undeniable omen in the reflection pool have rendered me untouchable, a sacred relic and a cursed pariah all at once. I am a paradox, and it is my only shield. I am sitting with Mira in Drazian's chambers, showing her how to braid thin strips of leftover silk, when he enters. The heavy stone door swings open, and he fills the archway, a mountain of dark armour and cold authority. I immediately stand, placing myself slightly in front of the child, my body tensing for a command, an expectation, a continuation of the strange, violent intimacy that has come to define our nights. His crimson eyes linger on me for a long moment, his gaze unreadable. I meet it without flinching, my chin held high, my vow to be his equal a silent mantra in my mind. He does not move toward the furs, nor does he issue an order for food or wine. "Come with me," he says in a low rumble that vibrates through the stone floor. "There is something I wish to show you." My mind races, suspicion coiling in my gut. Is this a test? A new form of torment disguised as a privilege? Every instinct I have honed for survival screams at me to refuse, to stay within the known confines of this gilded cage. But my new resolve, and a dangerous, undeniable flicker of curiosity, wars against that instinct. What else is there to this world besides a feast hall and a bedchamber? What other secrets does this mountain hold? I look at Mira, who shrinks back from his presence, and I know I cannot show fear. I must be the dawn I claim to be, and dawns are not afraid of shadows. I give Drazian a single curt nod. He turns and waits for me to follow. I give Mira's hand a reassuring squeeze, whispering for her to be brave, before stepping out of the chamber and into the echoing corridor at his side. We walk through the cavernous city, my two colossal guards following at a discreet but constant distance. We move away from the familiar, blood-soaked grandeur of the great hall, turning down corridors I have never seen, passages carved deeper into the mountain's heart. The air grows colder, the sounds of the city fading until all I can hear is the soft whisper of my bare feet on the stone and the heavy rhythmic tread of Drazian's armoured boots. The few Vrakan we pass, warriors on patrol, nobles moving between chambers, stop and stare, their glowing eyes wide with shock and curiosity as they watch their warlord escort his human prize into the depths. We arrive before a massive set of doors, wrought not from stone or wood, but from the polished fossilized ribs of some colossal, long-dead beast. Ancient faded runes are carved into the bone. Drazian places a hand on the door, and it swings inward with a deep, groaning sound, releasing a gust of cold, dry air that smells of dust, ancient leather, and time itself. I step across the threshold, and my breath catches in my throat. It is not a torture chamber. It is not a treasury. It is a library. A vast, circular cavern soars into a darkness so complete the ceiling is lost to sight. The walls are lined from floor to ceiling with shelves carved from the same black, obsidian-like stone as the dais. And they are overflowing with countless scrolls, leather-bound tomes with iron clasps, and even stacks of what look like ancient stone tablets. The only light comes from strange, glowing crystals embedded in the walls, which cast a cold, pale, and ghostly blue luminescence over everything. It is a place of profound silence, a tomb for forgotten words. As my eyes adjust, I realize the terrible truth of the place. The books, the scrolls, their bindings and markings are all different, a chaotic mismatch of 100 different cultures. I see the sun-faded leather of desert nomads, the lacquered wood bindings of a people from the Far East, and, on one shelf, the familiar tooled leather and silver leaf markings of my own ancestors. This is not a library of Vrakan knowledge. It is a library of the vanquished, a collection of histories and cultures stolen during their centuries of slaughter. It is the most macabre trophy room I could ever have imagined. I drift through the cold, silent space, a ghost among ghosts. My fingers tremble as I trace the spine of a book from my own homeland, a collection of children's stories I remember my grandmother reading to me from a tattered copy. To see it here, perfectly preserved in this tomb, sends a fresh wave of grief and rage through me. All these lives, all these stories, all this knowledge, reduced to a conqueror's collection. I turn to face him. He stands near the entrance, watching me, his arms crossed over his chest, his expression impassive. My new resolve battles with my old fear, and the resolve wins. Why? My voice is a ragged whisper, but it echoes in the cavernous silence. Why keep these? Why preserve the memory of the peoples you have destroyed? He is silent for a long moment, his crimson gaze sweeping over the shelves. Because history is a weapon, he says finally, his voice a low, gravelly rasp. To know your enemy, to know their stories, their gods, their weaknesses, is to ensure they can never rise against you again. We do not preserve their memory. We catalogue their defeat. His answer is as cold and brutal as I should have expected, yet a part of me had hoped for something more. Regret, remorse, something human. I press on, my own question surprising me. And your god, Akeldama? Do you keep her history here too? What does she truly want from you? This endless cruelty. He walks toward me, his steps slow and deliberate. He stops before a different section of the library, one filled with Vrakan scrolls bound in black leather. Akeldama is not a god of mercy. She is a god of survival. She was the first of us, the one who rose from near extinction and found strength in blood. She does not ask for cruelty. She asks for strength. She demands that we never be weak, never be victims, again. He pulls a scroll from the shelf. My ancestors were slaves, Selene, hunted, caged, slaughtered for sport by other creatures in a forgotten age. Akeldama taught us that to be the prey is to be nothing, so we became the predators. He looks at me, and for the very first time, I see a flicker of something beyond a warlord's pride in his eyes. I see the immense, crushing weight of his history, the paranoia of a once-hunted people who have sworn to never be hunted again. It doesn't excuse the horror, the slaughter, the evil they have wrought upon my own people. But for a fleeting, terrifying moment, I understand it. He has not shown me a library. He has shown me his soul, a cold, dark, and brutal place, built on a foundation of ancient fear. I leave the library with more knowledge, but also with a deeper, more unsettling understanding of the monster I have bound myself to.
Chapter 15. Drazien. I stand on a balcony of black ice that juts out from my chambers, overlooking the main cavern. From this vantage point, I can observe the movements of my court without being seen. I watch her. Selene. She moves with a new purpose, her steps sure, her chin held high as she tends to the child, Mira. The paralyzing fear that once clung to her like a shroud has been burned away, replaced by a resilient, quiet calm that is far more captivating than any feigned submission. My claim, our intimacy, has not broken her spirit as I initially thought it might. It has forged it into something new, something stronger, and that strength, I find, is something I desire more than her fear. The change in the court's demeanor is palpable. The open mockery has ceased, replaced by a resentful, cautious deference that is almost more insulting. But I am not a fool. I have ruled for 400 years, surrounded by ambitious, backstabbing nobles. I know that dissent, when silenced by force, does not die. It festers in the shadows, growing more potent, waiting for a moment of perceived weakness to strike. As if on cue, one of my personal guards approaches, his footsteps echoing in the corridor. Warlord, the council has been convened. I knew it was coming. They have had a cycle to lick their wounds and rally their factions. The obsidian council chamber is cold, the air thick with a tension that is sharper than a blade. The highest-ranking nobles of my court are assembled, their faces grim and unreadable. They stand around the great, polished stone table where I have brokered treaties and declared wars for centuries. Today their war is with me. They begin with empty platitudes about tradition and the sanctity of the solstice, their voices droning on about blood quotas and the ambiguous meaning of omens. I let them speak, my face a mask of cold authority. I know this is all a preamble, a ritualistic circling before the true attack. Their true grievance is the human I have claimed. Lady Sorexa, as always, is the voice of their poison. She rises, her emerald eyes burning with a righteous fury I know is rooted in pure, spiteful envy. She is a creature of ambition, and my choice of Selene is a personal affront to her own designs on my throne. The omens are clear, she proclaims, her voice ringing with false piety in the silent chamber. The snow falling into the caverns was not a blessing, but a tear of grief from the god. Akeldama mourns the defilement of our most sacred rites at the hands of a human interloper. Her faction of nobles murmurs in agreement, their voices a low, dangerous hiss. She points a slender, accusatory finger in my direction, her voice rising with practiced venom. You have brought a human into our sacred halls and declared her your mate. This obsession has blinded you, warlord. You have angered the god, and she will curse us all for this blasphemy unless we act now to appease her. Appease her how, Sorexa? I ask, my voice deceptively calm, the question a dare. As tradition demands, she hisses, her beautiful face contorting with triumphant cruelty. The human was brought here as a solstice offering. Her purpose was preordained. Her blood must be given to the god. We must sacrifice her! The chamber erupts. The dam of their resentment breaks, and a flood of angry voices shouts in agreement. They demand Solene's blood to restore the balance, to save them from a curse of their own making. They are a pack of jackals, emboldened by their shared fear and Sorexa's ambition. I listen to their arguments, my calculating mind weighing their loyalties, cataloging their weaknesses, my patience wearing thinner with every treacherous word. My temper, long held in check by centuries of iron-willed discipline, begins to fray. I have heard enough. I do not raise my voice. I do not engage in their pathetic political theater. I simply draw the long, dark blade from the sheath at my side. In one fluid, violent motion, I slam it down, point first, into the center of the ancient stone table. The sound is like a crack of thunder, a violent, ringing boom that shatters the arguments into instant, shocked silence. Shards of obsidian and stone splinter from the impact, skittering across the polished surface. Every eye, wide with a mixture of horror and surprise, is on me. I rise slowly from my throne, my hand resting on the bottom of my blade, which is now buried a hand's breadth deep in their council table. I let my gaze sweep across each of their faces, letting them feel the full, unrestrained weight of my wrath. This council is over, I state, my voice low and cold as the grave. There will be no sacrifice. I lean forward, my knuckles white on my sword, my voice dropping to a lethal growl that promises unspeakable violence. She is mine, by reflection, by blood, and by my will. Any who touch her, I pause, letting the threat settle in the frozen silence. Any who even speak of harming her again will not answer to this council. They will answer to me. And I will declare a war within these walls that will make our ancestors weep with the amount of rock and blood I will spill. The nobles recoil as if I had physically struck them. Even Sorexa takes a step back, her face pale, the victorious fire in her eyes extinguished and replaced with fear. I have asserted my dominance, and none here dare to challenge me openly. One by one, they bow their heads in submission. But as I look at them, at their lowered heads and resentful eyes, I see the truth. Their rebellion has not been crushed. It has merely gone into the shadows. And in those shadows I see Varric. He stands near the back, his crudely healed jaw a testament to his last transgression. His face is a mask of cruel neutrality, but his red eyes burn with an unholy light. He is watching, waiting, his hatred a palpable force. The Descent now has a leader, whether he knows it yet or not. I have won the silence, but I have not won their loyalty. The war for Selen's life has just begun.
There isn't much left of the world after the orcs came.
Savage. Brutal. Merciless.
If you're a woman, you're property. Even to other humans.
What happens when an orc stakes his claim on a human woman? Who would dare to stop him?
Me. Chapter 16. Solen. In the cycles that follow, a strange, unspoken truce settles over the Vrakan city. Drazian's threat at the council has effectively muzzled the nobles, but their hatred for me is a palpable thing, a cold pressure in the air whenever I leave his chambers. They no longer speak against me, but they watch. Their silence is more menacing than their taunts ever were, a venomous, simmering quiet that promises retribution. I am now allowed to move more freely through the main caverns, though always with two of Drazian's colossal personal guards trailing at a distance. It is not freedom, but a slightly larger, more ornate cage. I use this small liberty to go to the holding cells. The captives who survived the initial feast are kept here in grim, dark pens, carved directly into the mountain's living rock. The air is cold and damp, thick with the smell of unwashed bodies, stale blood, and a despair so profound it feels like a physical weight. The Vrakan see them as little more than a larder, but I see the faces of my people, their eyes hollowed out, their spirits broken. I tear long, clean strips from one of the crimson silk gowns I am now forced to wear, a small, defiant act of turning a symbol of my gilded captivity into a tool of mercy. I use the fabric to clean and bandage their festering wounds. I whisper what words of comfort I can, promising nothing but a moment of shared humanity in this desolate place. At first they look at me with suspicion, the warlord's pet, garbed in the colour of their suffering. But soon they begin to look at me with a fragile, dangerous hope, as if my survival, my strange status, might somehow promise their own. Mira follows me everywhere, a small shadow clinging to my side. She helps me, her small fingers surprisingly deft, as she helps tie a bandage around an old woman's arm. It is during one of these moments, surrounded by the quiet, shuffling misery of the cells, that a large shadow falls over us, eclipsing the torchlight. I look up into the cruel, red eyes of Varric. Drazian's second-in-command smiles, but it is a predator's smile, a gash in his face showing too many teeth. His jaw is a ruin, crudely reset and bound with dark leather, a testament to his last encounter with Drazian. The sight of him makes the captives shrink back, their fragile hope instantly extinguished. My guards tense behind me, their hands falling to the hilts of their swords, their bodies shifting into a state of lethal readiness. But they stop short of drawing their blades. A flicker of conflict, of sheer uncertainty, crosses their grim faces. I realise with a jolt of cold terror that their orders to protect me are warring with a deeper, older law. Varric is not just any warrior, he is Drazian's second-in-command, a Vrakan of immense power and status. For a guard to strike him would be an act of open treason, a challenge that could ignite a civil war right here in these miserable cells. They are trapped by their own rigid hierarchy, and Varric knows it. His smile widens, savouring their powerlessness, and mine. The warlord's little bride playing healer, Varric sneers, his voice a low, mocking growl, distorted by his injury. Does it soothe your conscience for sleeping with the butcher who slaughtered your village? Did he tell you how your own priest begged for his life? I flinch as if he has struck me, the image of our burning chapel flashing behind my eyes. I do not answer him. I turn my body slightly, placing myself in front of Mira. Varric's eyes gleam with a fresh wave of cruelty. He sees my protective gesture and his smile widens. He crouches down, bringing himself level with Mira, who freezes like a frightened rabbit in a snare. "Such a tiny thing," he murmurs, his gaze fixed on the child. He reaches out a hand, his sharp, dark claws extended, and runs a single claw slowly, deliberately, down Mira's soft cheek. He doesn't break the skin, but the threat is as sharp as any blade. Mira lets out a terrified whimper, a thin, broken thread of sound. "Stop it," I say, my voice trembling with a rage that eclipses my fear. "Drazian seems to think you are special." Varric continues, ignoring me, his claw still resting on Mira's face. "But you are just a human, and humans are so very easy to break. Their attachments, their love. It is a poison that makes them weak." A primal scream of rage tears from my throat, raw and animalistic. I said, "Stop!" I throw myself at him, knowing it's useless, knowing I am nothing against his strength, but I can't just stand by and watch. Before I can even reach him, a force of pure fury erupts into the cells. The air pressure changes, a shadow consuming the torchlight. Drazian is there, moving with an unnatural silence and speed that is terrifying in itself. He doesn't speak, he doesn't shout. He simply grabs Varric by the throat, lifts his massive armoured body off the floor as if he weighs nothing, and slams him against the far stone wall. The sound is sickening, a wet, heavy crack of bone and flesh hitting unyielding stone. Varric chokes, his red eyes wide with shock and pain. Drazian's fangs are bared, his face a mask of cold, focused savagery I have never seen before. He pulls Varric from the wall and slams him into it again. Bones snap with a sound like breaking branches. Varric's jaw, so recently healed, hangs at an unnatural angle, his mouth filling with dark blood. I watch, frozen in a state of primal horror. The captives in the cells shrink back, their faces filled with a terror that is older and deeper than anything I have yet witnessed. Mira buries her face in my robes, sobbing. Drazian drops Varric's broken body to the floor, where he lies groaning, and turns to me. His chest is heaving, the rage slowly receding from his crimson eyes, replaced by that familiar, possessive fire. He strides over to us and crouches down, ignoring Varric completely. His eyes, burning with the aftermath of his violence, scan Mira, checking for injury, before settling on me. The carnage he just wrought horrifies me to my very soul. The sheer, brutal violence of it makes me sick. He broke his second in command, a powerful Vrakan warrior, as easily as I would snap a twig. He is a monster, a savage. But as my heart hammers against my ribs, a new, terrifying thought worms its way through my horror. He didn't do this for power or for sport. He did this because Varric threatened Mira to get to me. All of that violence, all of that unrestrained, world-breaking savagery was for me. The realization is a dizzying, terrifying thrill that races through my blood. To be the object of such ferocious, lethal protection is both appalling and intoxicatingly seductive. And in that moment, I understand that Drazian's possession of me is not just a matter of politics or fate. It is a deep, violent, and absolute instinct that he will kill to defend.
Chapter 17. Drazian, Varric's broken form is dragged from the holding cells by my personal guard, his groans fading down the stone corridors until they are swallowed by the oppressive silence of the mountain. I leave him to the healers. He will live, and his shattered jaw will serve as a permanent, visible reminder to all who would dare to test my claim. My authority has been asserted, but the reason for it is what churns within me, a disquieting and unfamiliar sensation. My rage was not that of a ruler whose power was challenged. It was the savage, primal fury of a male whose mate was threatened. I watch Selene as she kneels to comfort the child, her small hands stroking Mira's hair, her voice a low, soothing murmur that cuts through the grim atmosphere of the cells. She possesses a quiet strength, a fierce compassion that defies the core tenets of our world, a world where such emotions are weaknesses to be exploited. That fire, the same fire that made her spit defiance at me, is a constant source of fascination. It is a light in this endless darkness, and I find myself drawn to it with an intensity that is unnerving. Later, I find her in my chambers. She is staring into the flames of the brazier, lost in thought. The events in the cells have left their mark. She is more withdrawn, her silence heavier, and I know she is grappling with the brutal reality of the protection I offer. She glances at me as I enter, her gray eyes shadowed and questioning, but she says nothing. I move past her to a small, private forge I keep in an adjoining alcove, a place where I maintain my armor and weapons. The solstice feast is over, but the night, for me, is not yet concluded. There is one final ritual to perform, one I've always conducted in stark solitude. This time will be different. My choice to perform it in front of her is a deliberate one, a message I'm not yet sure she will understand. I stoke the coals until they glow with a fierce orange heat that throws dancing shadows against the walls. From a set of heavy worn tools, I take a bar of black iron and a small, flat piece of bone, polished smooth by time. This is the ritual of the Chain of Night. Every year, on the breaking dawn after the longest night, I add a new link to the great chain that hangs on the wall of my chambers, a personal, physical record of my long existence. Each link represents a year survived since the first's awakening. It is a sacred act, a grim testament to my strength and endurance in a world that consumes the weak. She watches me, her expression wary, as I heat the iron in the roaring coals. When it glows with the heat of a captured star, I draw it out and begin to hammer it into shape on a small anvil. The rhythmic clang of metal on metal is the only sound, a stark and lonely percussion that has marked the passage of my centuries. The movements are practiced, precise, those of a warrior who knows his tools. I work the iron into a perfect, heavy link, identical in size and shape to the hundreds that already hang on my wall. While the new link cools, its angry red glow fading to a dull black, I take up a fine carving blade and the piece of bone. For 400 years, the runes I have carved into these talismans have been the same. Sharp, angular symbols representing war, solitude, and survival. This year my hands carve a different story. I etch a spiral for her unwavering spirit that refuses to break. I carve a single, sharp point of light for the dawn she represents to me. And finally, I carve 2 interlocking circles for a bond that has no beginning and no end. When both pieces are finished, I carry the new link and its unique talisman to the great chain that hangs on the wall like the spine of some great dead beast. I find the end, and with a pair of heavy tongs, I clasp the fresh iron link into place. The bone talisman, etched with its strange new runes, clinks against the cold metal of the previous year's link, the sound sharp and final. Each link is a year, I tell her, my back still to her. My voice is rough, unused to explaining such a personal rite. A testament to a year of war, of holding this city together, of surviving another turn of the seasons in this endless dark. I turn to face her. She's standing closer now than I realized, her gaze fixed on the newly added piece of my history. This link is not for a year survived, I say, my voice softer now, the words an admission I hadn't planned to make. It does not mark survival or war or duty. I reach out and tap the talisman where the new curved runes rest. This link marks you. Her eyes widen, her lips parting in a silent gasp. She takes a half-step closer, her gaze fixed on the chain as if it holds the answer to some profound question. She slowly reaches out a hand, her fingertips hesitating for a moment just inches from the metal before she finally dares to touch it. The touch is tentative, questioning, a delicate bridge between her world of fleeting warmth and my world of cold permanence. For the first time since I brought her here, she does not recoil from a symbol of my world. She engages with it, trying to understand. "Why?" she whispers, her voice so soft it is almost lost in the crackle of the brazier. The question is simple, yet the answer is the most complex truth I have ever confronted. It is a secret I have held for centuries, a truth that defies the logic of my long, solitary existence. It is a confession of the highest treason against the cold, ruthless nature of my being. During the silent hour, I begin, my voice a low rumble. Our people believe we hear the whispers of Akaldama, promises of power, omens, commands. I look away from her, toward the dying flames, unable to meet her gaze as I reveal this part of myself. For centuries I have stood in that silence and heard nothing, a quiet emptiness. It did not matter. My will is my own. I have never needed a god to tell me how to rule. I turn my gaze back to her. Her eyes are wide, her full attention on me, her expression one of rapt, unnerving focus. She is waiting. This year, during the silence, I didn't hear the god, I confess, the admission feeling like a stone being pulled from my chest, leaving a raw, open space behind. I heard your heartbeat. It was the only sound in the dark. Louder than any god, louder than any war. I hold her gaze, letting her see the truth of it, the terrifying vulnerability I am showing her for the first time. The god is silent, Selene. I hear only you. Her fingertips are still resting on the chain, on the link that now represents her place in my long, brutal history. A single tear traces a silent path down her cheek, but her expression is not one of fear or sadness or pity. It is something else entirely, something I have never seen on her face before. It looks like understanding.
Chapter 18. Selene. Drazian's confession hangs in the air between us long after he has fallen silent, a truth more binding than any chain. I hear only you. The words echo in the deepest parts of my mind, replaying again and again. For a creature who commands such absolute power, who is steeped in centuries of ritual and violent tradition, this admission is a seismic shift. It is a confession of a vulnerability I never imagined he possessed, a secret that feels more dangerous and sacred than any other. It means I am not just his captive or his property, but his focal point, the single steady rhythm in the silent emptiness of his long existence. The thought is both terrifying and profoundly, dangerously intimate. I look at the new link on his chain, the one he says marks me, and I feel the impossible weight of its meaning settle over me like a shroud. In his world, a weakness exposed is a throat offered to a rival. Has he, in telling me his secret, placed a blade in my hand? Or has he simply shown me the truth of the bond he feels? A truth that transcends power and politics. I don't know if this shroud is one of protection or imprisonment. In the next cycle of torchlight, a tense, sullen quiet hangs over the underground city. The drunken revelry of the blood feast is a sour memory, and the nobles move through the great hall with a new, guarded wariness. They watch me, their whispers following me like shadows. I catch snippets on the air, hissed words like witch, curse, human filth. I am the reason for their warlord's defiance, the cause of the rift in their court, the living symbol of their broken traditions. I do my best to ignore them, focusing on the small tasks I've given myself, tending to the few remaining captives, keeping Mira close by my side. Their hatred is a palpable thing, a cold pressure in the air, but Drazian's confession has kindled a small, stubborn warmth inside me, a shield against their scorn. I am sitting with Mira near one of the lesser-used corridors, sharing a piece of bread, when a sudden collective hush falls over the cavern. The constant hum of conversation, the clang of weapons practice, the distant drip of water from the ceiling, it all fades into an expectant, unnerving silence. Throughout the hall, Vraken stop what they are doing, freezing mid-stride, their glowing eyes fixed on the impossibly high, dark ceiling far above. I follow their gaze, my heart beginning to pound with a nervous rhythm. At first, I see nothing but the familiar, oppressive shadow. Then, I see it. A single, perfect white speck, tumbling slowly, lazily from the darkness. It is followed by another, and then a cascade. Snow. Snowflakes are drifting down through unseen cracks in the mountain's ceiling, falling like tiny, silent ghosts into the very heart of the Vraken city. The reaction is immediate and violent. A collective gasp of disbelief is followed by shouts of alarm. Panic erupts. This is not the revered snow brought down from the surface for their bonding rituals. This is an intrusion, an unplanned, unnatural event. It is an omen of the highest order. Priests in their dark ceremonial robes burst from the side chambers, as if summoned by the omen itself. Their faces masks of grim authority. They point to the falling flakes with skeletal, accusing fingers, their voices rising in a hissing, frantic chant. "The god weeps," one cries, his voice echoing with theatrical despair in the stunned hall. "She weeps for the traditions that have been broken, for the blood that was denied her." Another takes up the cry, his interpretation even more dire, his voice a fanatical shriek. "It is not grief, it is rage, a curse upon this hall." Akeldama turns her gaze from us. Fear, raw and contagious, ripples through the assembly like a shockwave. Vraken warriors who would face a blade without flinching now scramble away from the delicate snowflakes as if they were embers from a fire. The Vraken recoil from the falling snow as if it were acid, pulling their children back into the shadows of the pillars, their faces filled with a superstitious terror that is startling in its intensity. They see the snow as a tangible manifestation of divine wrath, and I feel their hundreds of accusing eyes land on me. I am the broken tradition. I am the source of their god's anger. I am the curse made manifest. But as I watch the delicate flakes descend, I don't feel their fear. I feel a strange, profound sense of peace. This is a piece of my world. The clean, cold snow from the skies above, a symbol of the life I was stolen from, is breaking into this dark, suffocating place of blood and shadow. It doesn't feel like a curse. It feels like purity washing away a stain. While the Vraken cower and pray, I stand up. Mira clutches at my robes, her eyes wide with the fear she has learned from our captors. But I gently pull away. I walk out from the relative safety of the pillars into the open centre of the hall, directly into the path of the gently falling snow. The nobles stare, aghast at my audacity, their whispers turning from fear to outrage at this blatant act of blasphemy. I ignore them and lift my face to the impossible sky. A single perfect snowflake lands on my cheek, cold and wet like a tear of absolution. I hold out my hand, palm up, and catch another one. I watch the intricate, crystalline star rest for a perfect second on my skin, before melting into a drop of pure, clear water. It is clean. It is beautiful. It is a blessing. I feel his presence before I see him. Drazian is standing at the edge of the dais, his gaze fixed on me, his expression unreadable. He watches as I, the supposed curse, welcome the very sign of his god's wrath. And in that moment, his confession from the night before clicks into place with this impossible omen. Everything reframes itself into a new, startling and powerful possibility. With the melted snowflake cool on my palm, I walk toward him, my steps sure and steady. The nobles part before me, as if I am carrying a plague, their faces a blend of horror and awe at my seeming madness. I stop before the dais, looking up at the warlord who hears my heartbeat in place of his god. Maybe it's not a curse, I say, my voice a quiet counterpoint to the priest's fearful hissing. I hold up my hand, showing him the single perfect drop of water on my skin. Maybe it feels like purity, not doom. I take a step closer, mounting the first step of the dais and lowering my voice so only he can hear the final, dangerous thought that has taken root in my soul. You heard me in the silence. Now the snow falls from my world into yours. I meet his intense crimson gaze without flinching. Maybe the god didn't choose me against you, Drazian. Maybe she chose me for you.
Chapter 19. Drazian. The air in my chambers hums with the weight of her words, a quiet rebellion against 4 centuries of Vraken dogma. Maybe the god didn't choose me against you, Drazian. Maybe she chose me for you. The thought is a spark in the dark, a heretical flame that dares to challenge the shadowed weight of tradition. My court, priests, nobles, all bound by superstition, sees only wrath in the snow drifting through the cavern's cracks, a curse from Akeldama's cold gaze. But Solène, this human untouched by our ancient rites, sees purity, a blessing in the fleeting flakes that melt against her skin. Her gray eyes, clear and fearless, hold a dawn I've never dared imagine. In her I glimpse an end to the endless night of my existence, a warlord's life of blood and solitude. I lead her from the feast hall's chaos, my hand firm on her arm, guiding her through corridors of black stone veined with frost that glitters like captured stars. The distant drums of the blood feast fade, their primal pulse swallowed by the silence of my private sanctum. Here the brazier's crimson flames cast a hollow glow, shadows writhing across the walls like lovers entwined. The air is warm, heavy with the smell of burning fat and the faint, intoxicating spice of ash wine that lingers on my breath. Solène stands by the fire, her crimson silks clinging to her curves like spilled blood, a contrast to the quiet strength now radiating from her. The frightened village girl is gone, burned away by the solstice's trials. In her place stands a woman, tempered by fire, unbroken by the horrors of my world. I fought this pull, this obsession that threatens to unravel me. In the cold hours before this night, I told myself she was a weakness, a flaw that Sorexa and Varrock would wield like a blade against me. I tried to see her as a symbol, a prophetic asset claimed from the reflection pool's vision, nothing more. But the lie crumbles like ash. She is no mere omen. She is the fire in my blood, the ache in my soul, the only thing that makes my eternal existence feel alive. I've tried to resist you, I confess, my voice a low growl, raw with a vulnerability I've never voiced. The words taste foreign, heavy as the chains I once draped on her. I step closer, drawn by the heat of her presence. I told myself this bond was a curse, a madness sent to break me. My crimson eyes lock onto hers, the brazier's light flickering in their gray depths like stars in a storm. But I cannot fight it. In all my centuries, battles, blood, hollow triumphs, you are the only thing I've ever truly craved. The only thing that makes this endless night feel alive. I reach out, my scarred hand cupping her face, thumb tracing the soft curve of her cheek. My touch is rough from centuries of wielding swords, yet she leans into it, unflinching, her breath a warm whisper against my skin. Her eyes flutter shut for a heartbeat, then open, holding mine with a quiet courage that ignites the air between us. The hunger in my blood roars, a ravenous beast, but it's tempered by a need to cherish, to worship, to preserve this fragile, fierce creature who dares to meet me as an equal. As much as Samara and I want to finish what these 2 characters have started, it looks Looks like this chapter is about to get too hot for this platform to handle.
Unfortunately, we have to pause here because their guidelines won't allow us to reveal the spiciest details.
To keep bringing you these free audiobooks, we have to follow their rules.
But don't worry. You can experience the full, unabridged version over at worldsofprotheka.com, where the boundaries of passion and fantasy collide.
Use code YouTube30 for 30% off any of our unabridged audiobooks set in the rich and immersive worlds of Protheka.
Protheka's magic is eternal.
With these scenes, it will be unforgettable. As the waves crash and subside, she gasps words that shatter my world and rebuild it in her image. Not fate, you. Her voice is steady despite the aftershocks, a vow that eclipses any reflection, any god. She chooses me, freely, fiercely, in this blood-soaked sanctum of shadows. When we return to the feast hall, the revelry has quieted, the air thick with sated languor. Nobles turn, their gazes lingering on the bond mark at her throat, vivid against her pale skin. They see the way my arm encircles her, possessive yet reverent, and the fierce light in her eyes. The whispers begin, a dark, deep hymn to a new legend, the human who became a warlord's bride, bound by blood and choice on this night.
Chapter 20. Solène. The mark on my neck is a constant, throbbing reminder of the bond I have willingly accepted. It feels like a brand, a permanent declaration of ownership burned into my very soul, but it is one I chose. Not fate, you. The words I whispered in the heat of our intimacy feel more true than anything I have ever known. My world has been turned upside down, my morality twisted into unrecognizable shapes, but this one thing feels solid and real. My connection to the monster who saved me, the warlord who chose me. The final ritual of the solstice begins just before the first hints of light are due to touch the surface world, a concept I can barely remember. The dawn rites are a solemn affair, a quiet ceremony of thanks to Akaldama for surviving another longest night. The Vrakan nobles, those who have not openly sided with Syrexa, gather one last time in the great hall. The signs of the earlier feast have been cleared away, and a heavy, reverent quiet has fallen over the cavern. Their faces are weary but calm, their animosity toward me seemingly replaced by a grudging, fearful acceptance. Drazian stands on the obsidian dais, a figure of absolute, unquestionable authority. I stand a few steps below him, Mira holding tightly to my hand. The child's trembling has eased, and she watches the proceedings with a wide-eyed curiosity that brings an ache to my heart. Finally, I do not feel like a captive. Standing here, with Drazian's presence a warm, solid wall at my back, I feel a part of something. I feel as if I have a place. The high priest, an ancient Vrakan with skin like wrinkled parchment, begins a low, guttural chant, his voice echoing in the vast, quiet space. It is in this moment of quiet reverence, this fragile peace, that the betrayal erupts. A blood-curdling war cry shatters the ceremony. It is a raw, brutal sound that rips through the holy silence and plunges the hall into instant chaos. Warriors loyal to Varric storm the feast chamber from the side tunnels, their armour marked with his crude claw sigil. They are a tide of fury and steel, a well-planned, coordinated assault. They tear down the crimson banners from the walls and overthrow the heavy obsidian altars, sending ritual goblets crashing to the floor. Chains rattle and steel clashes on stone as Drazian's personal guards, caught completely by surprise, are met with a sudden, brutal attack. It is a coup. Varric, his jaw now crudely reset and bound with thick leather straps, stands at the head of the rebels, his red eyes burning with a fanatic's hatred. He points a heavy, notched blade, not at Drazian, but at me. "The solstice demands a blood sacrifice, not a human bride," he roars, his voice distorted by his injury. "For the honour of our traditions, for Akaldama." The traditionalist nobles, led by a venomous-looking Lady Syrexa, who emerges from the shadows like a serpent, join the cry. This is their moment, their rebellion against Drazian's new way, and my existence is the spark they are using to set their world on fire. What happens next is a nightmare of fire and screams that eclipses everything I have witnessed before. Varric's warriors, driven by a lust for blood and a fear of change, do not attack Drazian directly. That would be suicide. Instead, they turn on the easiest targets, the remaining human captives. They storm the holding cells, dragging out the wounded men, women, and children I had just tended to. There, in the middle of the great hall, they begin their grotesque ritual to restore the old ways. They slice throats, their movements efficient and cruel, letting the blood flood the black marble floors in slick, dark pools. Their goal is not just to kill, but to make a statement, a ritual slaughter to appease the god they claim Drazian has forsaken by choosing me. My blood runs cold. The screams of my people fill the air, a sound I know will haunt me for the rest of my days. Drazian shouts commands, his voice a thunderclap of rage, and his loyal warriors engage the rebels. The chamber descends into a full-scale, bloody civil war, brother turning on brother. But it is too late for most of the captives. I pull Mira behind me, shielding her small body with my own as I back away from the fighting. My mind is a vortex of pure terror. We have to hide. We have to escape. I scan the chamber, my eyes searching for any path out of this charnel house. That's when I see him. A Vrakan soldier, his face contorted in a bloodthirsty snarl, breaks away from the main skirmish and heads directly for us. He has seen me, the human cause of all this strife. He has seen Mira, a small, easy target. He pins the terrified child against a pillar, raising a long, wicked-looking dagger, its tip gleaming in the torchlight. My promise to her, my vow to myself, flashes in my mind. We survive, no matter what. All fear, all thoughts of escape vanish, incinerated by a white-hot protective rage. I am no longer thinking. I am pure, primal instinct. With a scream that is torn from the depths of my soul, I hurl myself at the soldier, my nails bared like claws. I leap onto his back, clawing at his face, his eyes, anything I can reach. He roars in pain and surprise, shaking me off as one would a pesky insect. I fall hard to the floor, the impact jarring my bones. He turns on me, his lip curled back in a sneer, the dagger now meant for me. He is a massive, terrifying wall of muscle and armour, and I am small and weak in comparison. I am no match for him, but I am no longer prey. I scramble to my feet, and with a guttural scream of my own, I charge him again. I grab a heavy, blood-filled goblet from a nearby table and swing it with all the strength in my body. It connects with the side of his head with a sickening crack of metal against bone. He staggers back, stunned not by the force of the blow, which is negligible to him, but by the sheer suicidal fury of my defiance. He stares at me, this fragile human who refuses to cower, who dares to fight back. In his shock, I see a flicker of something I have never seen in a Vrakan before. Uncertainty. That single moment of hesitation is all Drazian needs. A shadow falls over us, a presence of absolute cold and fury. The soldier's head is suddenly gone, replaced by the dark, brutal sweep of Drazian's sword. The body collapses at my feet with a wet, final thud. I stand there, panting, my knuckles white where I still grip the dented, bloody goblet. My crimson silks are spattered with blood, some of it mine from the fall, some of it his. I look down at the dead soldier, then at my own trembling hands. The timid, inexperienced girl who was captured in her village chapel is gone forever. In her place is a woman who has discovered a hidden dangerous steel within herself, a woman who will fight and claw and bleed to protect what is hers.
Chapter 21. Drazian. I dispatched the soldier with a single, clean stroke, his headless body slumping at Solenne's feet. For a moment my world narrows to her, a single point of light in the raging storm of the coup. She stands amidst the chaos, spattered in blood, a dented goblet still clutched in her hand like a weapon. Her face is pale, her eyes wide with the shock of the violence, but the terror that once defined her is gone, replaced by a fierce, wild fire that mirrors the one in my own soul. A surge of savage, violent pride washes through me. Her human fragility, combined with that indomitable spirit, is a new and terrifying form of power. She is no one's prey. She is a warlord's mate. This is the truth for which I will now burn my world to the ground. But the battle still rages. My loyalists are outnumbered, caught off guard by the ferocity of the betrayal. The rebels are fueled by Varric's fanaticism and Syrex's poisonous whispers. This chaos must end, and it must end decisively. There is only one way to quell a rebellion built on the pretense of tradition, with a tradition far older and more absolute than any other. Varric! My voice bellows through the cavern, a roar of command that momentarily stills the fighting, cutting through the screams and the clash of steel. You challenge my rule. You claim I'm unfit. Face me in ritual combat. Let the old ways decide who is worthy. Varric, wiping blood from his mouth with the back of his gauntlet, turns to me. His red eyes, burning with a hatred that has festered for decades, meet mine across the blood-slicked floor. A duel to the death is a final binding judgment, the bedrock of our violent society. The winner is proven to have the strength, the will, and the favor of fate. He cannot refuse without being branded a coward and losing the support of every warrior he commands. "I accept," he snarls, his voice a distorted rasp through his injured jaw. The fighting halts. An unspoken command passes through the warriors on both sides. The chaotic din of battle is replaced by the shuffling of armored feet and the ragged, heavy breathing of exhausted fighters. They pull back, their blades still dripping, to form a large, ragged circle in the center of the hall. This is our way. The circle is now a temple, and its only god is death. All disputes of leadership, when brought to their peak, are settled with steel and blood. We meet in the center of the circle, our blades raised. He is a formidable warrior. I've always known this. His strength is born of brute force and a cruelty that knows no bounds. He fights with the wild, desperate rage of a male who has gambled everything on this single moment, his heavy sword a tool of butchery. Our swords clash with a deafening shriek of metal, a shower of sparks raining down on the marble. The force of the impact reverberates up my arms, a familiar and welcome shock. He's a whirlwind of savage, predictable blows, putting all his weight and fury behind every swing, trying to overwhelm me. I, in contrast, am patient. I am cold. My movements are precise, economical, deadly. I let him expend his energy, his fury, against the unyielding wall of my defense. "See how he weakens!" A voice shrieks from the crowd, sharp and venomous. Lady Syrexa. She stands at the circle, her face a dark mask of hateful triumph, her hands clenched at her sides. The human has sapped his strength. Akeldama has turned her gaze from him. He fights for a curse, and the god gives her strength to her true champion. Her words are poison, meant to give heart to the rebels and sow doubt among my loyalists. Varric seems to draw strength from her cries, roaring as he presses his attack with renewed fury. He forces me back a step, then another, his blade a blur of angry steel. But his rage makes him predictable. He's a blunt instrument, and I am a surgeon's blade. He overextends, a wild, desperate downward swing meant to cleave me in two, leaving a fractional opening at his side as he recovers. It is all I require. With a speed that belies my size, I parry his wild swing, the force of it jarring my entire body. I use his own momentum against him to spin him off balance, and as he stumbles, I drive my sword forward. The blade sinks to the hilt in his chest with a wet, grating sound of steel piercing leather, mail, and bone. His red eyes go wide with shock, a gurgle of blood escaping his lips as he looks down at the sword protruding from his sternum. But a simple death is not enough. This was not a challenge for honor. It was a betrayal of the highest order. It requires a statement that will be etched into the memory of our people for generations. While my blade is still buried in his chest, I look out over his shoulder at the horrified faces of the rebels who followed him. Then, with a deliberate, brutal motion, I twist the sword. A full, agonizing turn. Varroc's body convulses, a final agonized scream choked off by the blood flooding his lungs. I wrench my blade free and shove his corpse away from me. He stumbles back a few steps, a puppet with its strings cut, before his legs give out, and he collapses. His heavy armored form lands half in and half out of the sacred reflection pool. The cavern falls into a dead, profound silence. The duel is over. My rule is cemented. But something else, something unforeseen and sacrilegious, has happened. Varroc's blood, dark and thick, pours from the gaping wound in his chest, spilling across the black marble and into the still, dark water of the pool. A collective gasp, a sound of true religious horror, rises from the assembly. To spill blood in combat is the way of our people. But to spill the blood of a Vraken, a child of Akeldama, into her most sacred waters is an unprecedented desecration. The crimson spreads across the black surface like a poisonous bloom, glowing under the torchlight, strangling the pure darkness and tainting the reflection of the cavern ceiling. Priests fall to their knees, moaning in despair. Warriors who were baying for blood only moments ago now stare with wide, terrified eyes. Every Vraken in the hall, loyalist, rebel, priest, and noble, holds their breath, their eyes fixed on the desecrated water, waiting to see what this terrible, final omen will bring. Escape this world and step into one where romance and magic intertwine across realms, with stories that are not just standalone tales, but part of a vast, interconnected universe.
Imagine not just one, but 100 stories, where characters, destinies, and legends cross paths in unexpected ways.
100 audiobooks from the Romantasy 100 book bundle.
These aren't just isolated stories. They share themes, worlds, and threads that make every journey feel part of something grander.
Fated lovers, ancient prophecies, and the delicate balance between power and passion.
Get all of these stories today for a mind-blowing 90% off. That's right, 100 audiobooks for the price of 10.
800 hours of audio where these alpha males prove just how puny the human men of Prathika are. 12 complete series where they show their human women what they've been missing and more.
One-time purchase, lifetime access to a universe of interconnected magic and romance.
Prathika's magic is eternal. With the Romantasy 100 book bundle, your pleasure will be too.
Chapter 22. Solène. I watched the duel from the steps of the dais, my own small, desperate fight forgotten, my heart hammering in my throat with every jarring clang of steel on steel. It's a terrifying dance of violence, a brutal ballet between two of the most powerful creatures I have ever seen. My every instinct screams for me to look away, to hide, but I am frozen, unable to tear my gaze from the life and death struggle unfolding before me. I hear Lady Syrexa's hateful shrieks from in the circle, her words like poisoned darts aimed at Drazian, blaming me, always blaming me. A cold, sick part of me believes her. All this death, this Vraken turning on itself in a bloody civil war, it is because of me. Suddenly, it's over. Drazian's final move is not just a kill, it's an execution, a savage, undeniable statement of power meant to crush the heart of the rebellion. Varroc's body falls, and blood, so much blood, spills into the sacred black lake at the centre of the hall. The silence that follows is heavier and more absolute than any I have experienced here. It is a silence of shock, of horror, of sacred terror. The Vraken, loyalist and rebel alike, stare at the blood spreading through their god's reflection pool, their faces pale and etched with a deep, religious dread. They have witnessed a victory, but they have also witnessed a profound desecration. The air is ripe with unspoken questions, with the fear of a wrath far greater than any warlord's. The water shimmers. The crimson ripples glow strangely under the torchlight, the surface of the pool seeming to writhe as if in agony. A light begins to form within its depths, a pale, ghostly luminescence that has nothing to do with the torches above. It pulses softly, a cold, white light that pushes back against the bloodstain. The Vraken around me fall back, their earlier bravado and bloodlust replaced by murmurs of fear and awe. What is this? Is it the god, rising in her wrath to punish them for the sacrilege? Is it a final damning curse upon them all? An image takes shape in the blood-rippled water. It is a face, my face. It stares up from the depths of the pool, impossibly clear, pale as snow, my grey eyes steady and serene. It is the vision Drazien saw on the first night, the omen that began this entire chain of events, now made terrifyingly, undeniably real for all to see. The blood of the rebel who wanted me dead has become the canvas for my vindication. Lady Syrexa, who had been watching the desecration with a triumphant sneer, falters. The colour drains from her face, replaced by a mask of dawning, abject horror. Her entire argument, her righteous crusade built on the sacredness of tradition and the will of the god, has just been obliterated by that same god in the most public and spectacular way imaginable. The whispers grow louder around me, a rising tide of confusion, awe, and fear. It is her. The reflection. It is real. In that moment of stunned silence, as every eye is fixed upon my impossible image in the pool, a profound strength surges through me. The words Drazien confessed to me, the blessing I saw in the snow, the steel I found when protecting Mira, it all converges into a single clarifying point of truth. I am not a curse. I am not a weakness. I am the answer. I step forward, leaving the relative safety of the dais. The heavy ceremonial chains clink with a sound that is no longer one of bondage, but of proclamation. I walk to the very edge of the desecrated pool, my own impossible reflection staring up at me, and I find my voice. It is not the trembling whisper of a captive, but the clear, ringing tone of a prophet. I am not a curse! My voice rings out, strong and sure, echoing through the vast, silent cavern. The Vraken turn as one from the pool to stare at me, their faces a mix of terror and wonder. I am the morning after the longest night. My declaration, coming on the heels of the impossible omen, shatters their reality. This is not a blasphemy spoken by a human pet. It is a prophecy fulfilled, an explanation for the inexplicable. Before my eyes, several of the nobles, scarred warriors and proud ladies who had despised me only moments before, sink to their knees. They tremble, their heads bowed, their certainty destroyed. They do not know if they are witnessing a revelation or the ultimate sacrilege, but they know their world has just changed forever. And I, the girl who was stolen as a sacrifice, am somehow, impossibly, at the very centre of it all.
Chapter 23. Drazien. The cavern is suspended in a moment of impossible silence, broken only by the echo of Selene's voice. I am the dawn after the longest night. Her words wash over the stunned assembly, a declaration that is both a comfort and a terrifying challenge to their entire worldview. They stare, transfixed, at the sight before them, the human girl, standing beside the sacred pool that bears her glowing reflection, her face resolute and strong, transformed by the night's fire. Below me, nobles who stood with Varric moments ago are sinking to their knees, their certainty shattered by the undeniable power of the moment. They are witnessing the birth of a new legend and the death of an old world. I look at her, and the last vestiges of doubt in my soul, the fear of weakness, the cynical disregard for omens, are burned away. For centuries, I've been a warlord bound by ritual and hunger, my existence a cold, unchanging cycle of survival and dominance. She is the cataclysm that has broken that cycle. Varric was wrong. She's not my ruin. She is my redemption. The reflection was not a simple omen for a mate. It was a prophecy of the profound change she would bring to my world and to me. Lady Sorexa stands frozen near the edge of the circle, her face a mask of disbelief and incandescent fury. Her political maneuvering, her appeals to tradition, her calls for Solenne's blood, it has all turned to ash in her mouth. The god she claimed to speak for has just shown her favor to a human in the most undeniable way possible. Her power, built on a foundation of lies and superstition, has crumbled. I will not let this moment pass. This is not just a victory over a rival in a bloody duel. This is the foundation of a new era, and it must be sealed in ceremony and command. I step down from the dais, my boots silent on the blood-stained marble. The crowd, a sea of awed and terrified faces, parts before me as I walk to Solenne's side. I take her hand, the one that still bears the faint, silvery scar from when I drank from her in defiance of the rites. It is small and warm in my own, a fragile living anchor in the cold, dead hall. I raise our joined hands high for the entire assembly to see, a symbol of our united worlds. She is not a curse! My voice thunders through the cavern, a peal of absolute authority that shakes the very stalactites from the ceiling. She is my mate, chosen by the reflection, blessed by the falling snow and sealed by my own will. She is mine for this night and for all the nights to come. She is your queen. My declaration is the final, shattering blow to the old traditionalists. It is one thing to see an omen, another for their warlord to confirm it as unbreakable law, to elevate a human to the highest station. Sorexa lets out a scream of pure, undiluted hatred. It is the sound of a queen whose kingdom has just crumbled at her feet, a sound of impotent rage. "You will regret this, Drazian!" she shrieks, her beautiful face twisted into an ugly snarl, all pretense of nobility gone. "Both of you! This is not over! I will have my vengeance! I will bring war to these caverns that will make this skirmish look like a child's game!" Her threat hangs like poison in the air, a promise of future conflict. Then, before my guards can seize her, she turns and flees, vanishing into the dark network of tunnels that honeycomb the mountain. Her few remaining supporters, seeing their causes lost, scatter, melting away into the shadows after her. Her venom is gone from my hull, for now, but the threat of it lingers. I pay it no mind. My focus is on the history I am forging in this moment. I look down at Solenne. Her face is pale, drained by the night's events, but her eyes are bright with a strength that makes my ancient heart pound in my chest. She's trembling slightly, but she stands tall, unflinching in the face of my entire court. Without a word, I release her hand, only to slide my arm beneath her legs and lift her into my arms. She lets out a small gasp of surprise, but does not protest, her arms finding their way around my neck. I carry her through the silent, watching crowd and ascend the steps to the obsidian dais, to the throne that has been mine alone for centuries. I do not take my throne. Instead, I place her upon it, seating her on the cold, black stone where only Vrakan rulers have ever sat. The silver-black ceremonial chains, once a symbol of her ownership and captivity, are still draped across her shoulders. I take the heavy, clattering links and arrange them carefully over her lap and around her like a web of dark silver. They are no longer a crown of bondage, but a symbol of her impossible journey and her new power. She sits on the throne of the Vrakan, a human bride who survived the longest night and looks for all the world like a queen. I stand beside her, my hand resting on the hilt of my bloodied sword, and look out at my people. I see the awe, the fear, and the dawning, reluctant acceptance on their faces. In one night, I have defied the gods' will only to have it affirmed. I have broken with centuries of tradition to forge a new one. I have cemented my power not by bowing to the old ways, but by creating a new path with a human as its center. The whispers of a new era are no longer whispers. They are here, and we will face them together.
Chapter 24. Solène. The walk back to Drazian's chambers is a fevered blur, the weight of the kneeling Vracken's gazes, part awe, part dread, clinging to me like damp silk. I, Solène, meant to be a blood offering, now stand as a prophetess, a living omen cradling the fate of their shadowed kingdom in my mortal hands. The air hums with the echo of my own voice, declaring myself the dawn after their longest night, a defiance that still pulses in my veins. Drazian carries me from the obsidian throne, his stride unwavering through the parting sea of his people, their crimson eyes glinting in the torchlight like scattered embers. The heavy stone door of his chambers slams shut behind us, sealing out the brutal, transformed world beyond, leaving only the lost sanctum of his private domain. He sets me down, my bare feet brushing the cold marble floor, veined with frost that glimmers like frozen veins in the brazier's crimson glow. The ceremonial chains, draped so deliberately across my shoulders on the throne, slide with a metallic clatter, their weight a tangible reminder of my new reality. No longer mere bonds of captivity, they are the regalia of a queen, a crown of silver and shadow, heavy with meaning. The thought is a cage of its own, more terrifying than iron, for it binds me not to a warlord, but to a destiny I never sought. Drazian's crimson gaze burns into me, intense and unyielding, the savage warlord who slew Varric replaced by a male whose reverence before his court still lingers in my mind. The silence between us is a living thing, thick with unspoken questions. What am I now? What are we? The brazier's flames cast writhing shadows across the walls, etched with runes that whisper of blood oaths and eternal nights, the air heavy with the scent of burning fat and the faint, intoxicating spice of ash wine. I lift a hand, fingers tracing the cold, smooth links of the silver chains binding my wrists. They gleam like moonlight against my skin, a stark contrast to the warmth pulsing beneath. Will you keep me bound forever? My voice is a whisper, fragile yet sharp, carrying more than the question of metal. It's about us, about whether I'll remain his possession, his reflection-chosen prize, tethered by prophecy and his indomitable will. His eyes flicker from my face to the chains, his expression a shadowed enigma. Silence stretches, taut as a drawn bowstring. Then he reaches for a small, ornate key hanging from a chain tucked beneath his armour, its presence unnoticed until now. He pulls it over his head, the motion deliberate, and steps toward me. My heart quickens, a frantic drumbeat, but I hold my ground, refusing to let fear reclaim me. His large, warm hands envelop my bound wrists, the contrast of his calloused fingers against the cold metal sending a shiver through me. He inserts the key into the intricate lock, and with a soft, resonant click, the chains fall away, pooling on the floor with a clatter that echoes like a final note. My arms feel impossibly light, as if I could float away, unbound at last. But he doesn't stop there. In a gesture that sears through my soul, he places the key in my trembling palm, closing my fingers around its cold weight. The tunnels Mira spoke of are real, he says, his voice a low, rumbling confession, grave with sincerity. Old passages hidden and forgotten, they lead to the surface, to freedom. His crimson eyes meet mine, stripped of pretense, burning with an intensity that makes my breath catch. You asked for freedom. It's yours. The choice is yours. I stare at the key, its intricate design glinting in the firelight. Freedom. It's tangible, real, a path back to the snow-draped pines, to a world where monsters are mere tales whispered by hearths. I could be Selene again, not a queen, not a legend, just a girl who survived. My hand trembles, the weight of the choice heavier than any chain. I look up at him, seeing the warlord who tore me from my village, the killer who bathed the reflection pool in blood. But I also see the male who defied his court for me, who heard only my heartbeat in the silent hour, who looked at me not as a curse, but as his dawn. The monster and the man blur into one, and I can no longer separate them. The surface calls, a life of hiding, haunted by the shadows of this place, forever glancing over my shoulder. Then I think of the life here, beside him, a life steeped in danger, in blood, in the treacherous dance of Vrakan politics, but also a life of power, of purpose, where I could shield others like Mira, where I could be the dawn I claim to be. My heart aches with the choice, torn between fear and a fierce, unyielding desire. Slowly, deliberately, I open my hand and place the key on the stone table beside me. The clink is a vow, a rejection of escape. I choose this life. I choose him. Relief floods his face, raw and vulnerable, a crack in his iron facade that makes my chest tighten. He pulls me to him, his arms enveloping me not with possession, but with a desperate, reverent need that mirrors my own. Our lips meet, a kiss that's both tender and fierce, tasting of ash wine and the salt of my own resolve. The brazier's light paints us in shades of fire and shadow, our silhouettes merging against the rune-etched walls.
This scene is about to get too steamy for this platform's comfort. And as much as we'd love to keep going, their guidelines say we need to stop here.
To continue releasing these free audiobooks on this platform, we've got to play by the rules.
The passion doesn't end here.
Visit worldsofprothika.com to hear the full, uncut version of this fantasy romance, and every daring moment that YouTube can't handle.
Use code YouTube30 for 30% off unabridged audiobooks in the Worlds of Prothika.
Don't let YouTube hold you back. Immerse yourself in a world of magic, danger, and unfiltered passion.
Prothika's magic is eternal.
Listen unabridged and you'll never want to go back. Afterward, we lie tangled in the furs, his head resting on my chest, the steady rhythm of his heart a counterpoint to my own. The brazier's dying embers cast a soft glow, the shadows softening into a velvet embrace. He stirs, lifting his head, his crimson eyes searching mine, silently asking what he's already answered. I stay, I whisper, the words a final, unshakable vow, binding me more surely than any chain or prophecy. His arms tighten around me, reverent and possessive, as he pulls me closer. Because I want to.
Chapter 25. Drosian. Her words, I stay, because I want to, are a vow that solidifies my world in a way that steel and stone never could. It is one thing to be bound by an omen, a fate thrust upon you by a fickle god. It is another thing entirely to be chosen freely. The choice is a gift more precious than any jewel or territory, a testament to the impossible bloody bond we have forged in the crucible of this solstice. I hold her, the new queen of my dark, underground world, and I do not feel the familiar, cold weight of solitude. We emerge from my chambers as the true dawn breaks over the surface world. The Great Hall is a wreck, the aftermath of Varric's coup, evident in the overturned tables, the discarded weapons and the dark, drying stains on the marble floor. My loyalists are in control, their armor dented and spattered with the blood of their former brethren. The last of the rebels are either dead or in chains, their cause broken, their leader's blood desecrating the sacred pool. The remaining nobles and priests are gathered in sullen, exhausted groups, their faces a mixture of fear, confusion, and a dawning, uncertain awe. The longest night is over, but what new day awaits them? It is then that a new light begins to fill the cavern, a light unlike any I have seen in this hall before. It is not the red gold of torches or the pale, ghostly glow of the reflection pool. It is a clean, white, and utterly alien light cutting through the ancient gloom from high above. A collective gasp rises from the assembly as, for the first time in living memory, shafts of actual sunlight pierce the ceiling cracks. The dawn, which has always been a remote, abstract concept in our subterranean world, a signal to retreat from the surface, is fracturing through the rock, scattering across the floor and the surface of the pool in dazzling, brilliant shards of pure white light. My people stare in awe, their faces lifted to the impossible light, their crimson eyes wide with wonder. They see it as I do, a final, undeniable omen. The night of blood and stagnant tradition is over, and a new dawn, literal and symbolic, has arrived. This is the moment to seal the change, to ensure the sacrifices of this night, on both sides, were not in vain. "The blood feast is over!" I proclaim, my voice echoing with the finality of a judge's sentence in the suddenly silent hall. The nobles turn to me, their faces illuminated by the unfamiliar holy sunlight. The senseless slaughter, the theatrical cruelty presented as tradition, it ends now. A shocked murmur ripples through the crowd. To end the feast is to end the very core of their solstice identity, the bloody ritual that has defined them for centuries. The solstice will be a time of bonding, of reaffirming our strength, not of feasting on the weak, I continue, my gaze sweeping over them, my voice leaving no room for argument, daring any to challenge me. Varric's rebellion was the last gasp of a dying way, a way of fear and mindless cruelty. New traditions will rise from the ashes of the old, traditions of strength, but also of reason. This I command. The nobles bow their heads, muttering of change, of omens, of a new destiny. They are a people adrift, their old certainty shattered. They will look to me to guide them, and I will. But as I look at Selene, her face turned up to the shafts of light with a quiet, wondrous joy, I know I will not be guiding them alone. I take her hand and lead her from the dais through the great hall and toward a high balcony carved from the living black ice of the mountain. It overlooks the cavern, a place from which I have often stood to watch my city, a solitary king observing his dark domain. As we step out into the open air of the cavern, we see that the snow is still falling. The flakes drift down through the beams of sunlight, no longer a sign of a god's curse, but a sparkling, ethereal cascade of diamond dust. It is a sight of impossible, fragile beauty, the perfect synthesis of our two worlds, the cold, dark ice of my home, and the pure, white snow of hers, all illuminated by the unfiltered light of the dawn. We stand there together, side by side, and Selene, with a childlike grace that makes my heart ache, holds out her palm. I find myself mirroring the gesture, extending my own hand, my black leather glove a stark contrast to her pale skin. A single perfect snowflake lands on my glove, its intricate geometric pattern a marvel of creation. I watch it for a second, a fleeting moment of perfect order, before it melts from the residual heat of my skin. Selene catches a flake on her palm and smiles, a true, gentle smile of pure joy that makes the sunlight itself seem dim in comparison. "They are so fragile," she whispers, her voice filled with a simple wonder that I have not heard in centuries. "And yet," I reply, my voice rough with an emotion I cannot name, a feeling of profound, protective tenderness, "they can cover the entire world and stop armies in their tracks." We stand in silence for a long time, catching the falling snowflakes in our palms, marveling at their fragility and their collective strength. They are a symbol of our impossible union, her light in my darkness, her quiet resilience against my brutal power. The human who survived the feast, and the warlord who tore down 1,000 years of tradition to keep her. Together, we watch the dawn break over our new, uncertain world.
This huge orc brings out the animal in me.
In a world where humans have been driven underground, living like rats is the only way to stay safe from the marauding orcs.
All my life, my only job has been to make sure I have enough to eat.
These orcs of the Burning Sun clan will vow to keep their human mates safe.
There is a nobleness to these giant savages, alpha male warriors who will protect their women at all costs.
Get this complete series of books following the Burning Sun clan for 70% off. Each book is a full-length monster romance that features a giant orc with eyes for his beloved, curvy human. Happily ever after guaranteed.
Protheka's magic is eternal.
This bundle will show you that size really does matter.
Chapter 26. Solène. We stand on the balcony of black ice for what feels like an eternity, watching the impossible sight of snow and sunlight mingling in the rarefied air of the cavern. The chaos in the great hall behind us has subsided, replaced by the quiet, uncertain hum of a world remaking itself. Drazian's hand finds mine, his fingers lacing through my own. His touch is no longer a claim of ownership, a brand of a master on his property. It is a gesture of partnership, a silent anchor in the sea of change we now face together. Eventually, a small, hesitant figure appears in the archway behind us. It's Mira. She pauses for a moment, her eyes wide as she takes in the sight of the warlord and his human mate standing together in the strange new light. With a courage I know has been hard won, she walks toward us, her steps shy but no longer full of the abject fear that has haunted her since our capture. She stops beside me, her small hand reaching out to clutch at my silk robes, a familiar grounding gesture. Drazian looks down at her, and for the first time, I see no coldness or indifference in his crimson eyes, only a quiet, solemn acceptance. She is part of this new world, a part of my story, and therefore a part of his. Together, the three of us watch the sunrise. We see it not as a direct orb in the sky, but as a growing, brilliant light that strengthens the beams cutting through the ceiling, pushing the ancient, oppressive shadows of the cavern into full retreat. Warmth, real warmth, touches my skin for the first time since I was captured, a gentle caress that feels like a forgotten memory. Hope, which has been a dangerous and painful thing to harbour in this place, now feels possible. A tangible thing I can breathe in with the clean, sunlit air. Mira, standing safely between the warlord and his human mate, has a touch of colour returning to her cheeks, her small face turned up to the light with a child's simple, uncomplicated wonder. She is a symbol of the innocence worth fighting for, and her survival beside me is a testament to the promises we made to ourselves in the dark. Looking at that impossible dawn, at the light conquering the darkness, I make a final, silent vow. It is not a vow to escape, not a vow to fight, but a vow to be. I will never be prey again. I will not cower before Vrakan nobles or their silent god. I will not be a silent, beautiful prize sitting on an obsidian throne, a mere symbol of my mate's power. I will be his partner, his equal. I will learn the intricate, brutal politics of this dark underground world, and I will help him shape it into something new, something better. I will be a queen, not just a bride. I will stand as his equal, or I will not stand at all. As if hearing my thoughts, my silent declaration of intent, Drazian turns to me. The dawn light casts his harsh, handsome features in a soft, ethereal glow, smoothing away the centuries of war and solitude, revealing the male beneath the monster. In this light, the terrifying warlord seems, for a moment, like just a man, bound to a woman he chose against all reason, all tradition, all logic. "Bride of the longest night," he says, his voice quiet and reverent, not mocking. It is not a title, but a new name, a new identity, forged in the blood and fire and impossible hope of the solstice. The words echo in the space between us like a final vow, sealing our impossible union with a poet's grace. I am Solène, the girl from a forgotten village who was chosen as a sacrifice. I am the reflection in the water, the dawn after the dark. I am his. Not by fate, not by force, but by my own choice, a choice I made when I laid down the key to my freedom. And our legend is already beginning. I can hear the whispers spreading through the caverns behind us, the story passed from noble to guard, to the lowest serving captive. They speak of the human who survived the blood feast, who faced down the court, whose appearance in the sacred pool was a prophecy fulfilled. They speak of the warlord who defied tradition, who chose devotion over dominance, and who found his strength not in solitude, but in a bond with his opposite. Our story, sealed in blood on the holiest and most violent night of their kind, will become both a defiance of the old ways and the beginning of a new legend. A love that reshaped a kingdom, a human who changed the meaning of the longest night forever. I look up at Drazian, my warlord, my mate, my partner, and I promise to walk beside him into whatever darkness or dawn comes next.